Right now, something inside you already knows that you are capable of more. You feel it. But every morning you wake up carrying the same invisible weight, the same doubts, the same patterns, the same version of yourself that you have been quietly trying to escape for years. What if the only thing standing between you and the life you actually want is a single shift happening inside your own mind? Not years from now. Starting today. This audio contains 10 of the most powerful principles ever discovered about how the human mind actually changes. Real science, real strategies, real results that ordinary people are experiencing right now. By the time you finish listening, you will understand exactly why your life has looked the way it has, and more importantly, exactly how to change it permanently. Stay with this until the very end, because what you are about to hear will surprise you in the best possible way. Chapter 1. Awaken the hidden power inside your subconscious mind. There is something happening inside you right now that you cannot see, cannot touch, and cannot hold in your hands. It is working at this very moment while you read these words. It was working while you slept last night. It was working when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were going through your hardest days and your best days. It never stops. It never rests. It never takes a break. And yet, most people go through their entire lives without ever truly understanding what it is or how to use it. That thing is your subconscious mind. And when you finally understand how it works, when you finally learn how to speak to it, how to direct it, how to feed it the right information, your life will begin to shift in ways that will leave you speechless. Most people believe that they are controlled by their circumstances. They believe that the world around them decides what they get to experience, what they get to feel, and what they get to become. They look at the people who are succeeding and think those people got lucky. They look at people who are happy and think those people just had easier lives. They look at people who wake up every morning with energy and purpose and drive, and they wonder what those people have that they do not. The answer is not luck. The answer is not a better background. The answer is not money or connections or a special gift that only a few people are born with. The answer is that those people, whether they know it or not, have learned how to work with their subconscious mind instead of against it. Your subconscious mind is the most powerful tool you will ever have access to. It controls nearly every function of your body. It stores every memory you have ever had. It holds every belief you have ever formed. It carries the emotional weight of every experience you have ever lived through. And most importantly, it is constantly shaping your reality without you even realizing it. It is influencing the decisions you make, the thoughts you have, the words you speak, and the actions you take. Every single day, every single hour, every single minute. The question is not whether your subconscious mind is shaping your life. It absolutely is. The question is whether it is shaping your life in the direction you actually want to go. Here is the truth that changes everything. Your subconscious mind does not know the difference between something that is real and something that is vividly imagined. It does not judge. It does not evaluate. It does not sit back and decide whether an idea is worthy or not. It simply accepts what it is given and works tirelessly to make that thing your reality. If you feed it fear, it will create more reasons to be afraid. If you feed it doubt, it will find more evidence that you are not capable. If you feed it failure, it will keep pulling you toward situations that feel like failure. But if you feed it possibility, if you feed it strength, if you feed it a clear and vivid picture of the life you want to live, it will work just as hard in that direction. It does not pick sides. It simply executes. Think about the last time you learned something new. When you first learned how to drive a car, you had to think about every single movement. You had to consciously remind yourself to check the mirror, to press the brake gently, to signal before turning. It was exhausting. It required your full attention. But now, if you have been driving for years, you get into a car and you just drive. You do not think about every movement. Your subconscious mind has taken over. It has made those behaviors automatic. That is exactly what happens with your beliefs. your habits, your emotional responses, and your daily patterns. At some point in your life, things happened that taught your subconscious mind how the world works. And since then, it has been running those programs automatically. The problem is that many of those programs were written during times of pain, confusion, or limitation. And those programs are still running right now. When you were a child, someone may have told you that you were not smart enough. That message went into your subconscious mind and became a belief. And that belief became a program. And that program has been running quietly in the background of your mind ever since, making you second-guess yourself, making you hesitate before speaking, making you feel like you are not quite good enough for the things you actually want. You did not choose that program, you did not install it on purpose, but it is there, and until you become aware of it and decide to replace it, it will keep running. This is the moment where everything begins to change. Awareness is the first key. You cannot change what you cannot see. And so the first step in awakening the power of your subconscious mind is to become a calm, honest observer of your own thoughts. Not to judge them, not to fight them, but to notice them. To sit quietly and pay attention to the voice inside your head. What does it say when you look in the mirror? What does it say when you think about your goals? What does it say when someone offers you an opportunity? That voice is giving you a direct window into what your subconscious mind currently believes. And what it currently believes is exactly what it is currently creating in your life. Begin to notice the patterns. Notice when you feel resistance. Notice when you feel fear without any real reason. Notice when you shrink away from something that could actually be good for you. Those moments are not just random feelings, they are signals. They are your subconscious mind running old programs that were designed to protect you, but that are now limiting you. Every time you feel that resistance, you have a choice. You can let the old program run, or you can pause, take a breath, and begin to speak a new message to yourself. The subconscious mind is most open to new information during two specific times of day. The first is right before you fall asleep at night. The second is right after you wake up in the morning. These are the moments when your brain is in a state between full wakefulness and sleep, a state where the critical, analytical part of your mind relaxes and the deeper layers become more accessible. These are your golden windows, and most people waste them completely. They fall asleep watching something that floods their mind with stress or drama. They wake up and immediately pick up their phone and fill their mind with news and notifications before they have even had a chance to take a conscious breath. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, unfocused, and disconnected from their purpose. Starting tonight, use those golden windows with intention. Before you close your eyes, speak to your subconscious mind. Not in a complicated way, just simply and clearly. Speak the truth of who you are becoming. Say to yourself that you are strong, that you are capable, that your mind is clear and your body is healthy and your life is moving in a powerful direction. Say it calmly and clearly, as if it is already true. Because to your subconscious mind, the feeling of certainty in your words is more powerful than any logical argument you could make. It does not respond to logic. It responds to emotion. It responds to repetition. It responds to the consistent energy behind what you are telling it. When you wake up in the morning, before you check your phone, before you think about your to-do list, before the weight of the day begins to press down on you, take 5 minutes to set the tone for your mind. Breathe slowly. Think of 3 things that are real and good in your life right now. Genuine gratitude is one of the most powerful frequencies you can introduce to your subconscious mind because it immediately shifts your internal state from lack to abundance, and your subconscious mind always moves toward the dominant frequency you are carrying. If you walk around feeling like you do not have enough, it will keep creating situations that reinforce that feeling. If you walk around feeling genuinely thankful for what you have, it will keep creating situations that add to that feeling. Now here is something that very few people understand about the subconscious mind. It cannot process a negative instruction directly. If someone tells you right now not to think about a red balloon, the first thing your mind does is picture a red balloon. The subconscious mind does not process the word not. It skips it and goes straight to the image or the feeling associated with the rest of the sentence. This means that when you say things like, "You do not want to be broke," or "You do not want to be sick," or "You do not want to keep failing," your subconscious mind hears broke, sick, and failing, and it moves toward those things. This is why so many people work incredibly hard to move away from what they do not want and still keep ending up in the same place. They are accidentally feeding the exact thing they are trying to escape. The shift is to always state what you want in the positive, not what you are running from, but what you are moving toward. Instead of saying you do not want to be broke, say that money flows to you consistently and abundantly. Instead of saying you do not want to be unhealthy, say that your body is strong and your energy is growing every day. Instead of saying you do not want to keep failing, say that every step you take is building toward your success. The words you use are not just words, they are commands, and your subconscious mind is always listening. Another powerful truth about the subconscious mind is that it learns through repetition. One powerful thought will not overwrite years of negative programming, but consistent, daily, intentional repetition absolutely will. Think about how many years certain beliefs have been playing in your mind. Think about how many thousands of times certain negative thoughts have run through your head. You did not develop those patterns overnight, and you will not dissolve them overnight, but you can begin dissolving them today. And if you stay consistent, if you commit to feeding your subconscious mind the right material every single day without exception, within weeks, you will begin to notice a shift. Within months, people around you will notice a shift. Within a year, you will look back at who you were when you started, and you will barely recognize that person. Consistency is the secret that most people skip over because they want fast results, and they stop before the transformation has time to take root. The subconscious mind is like a garden. You have to prepare the soil, you have to plant the seeds, you have to water them every day. You have to pull the weeds when they come up, and you have to be patient enough to wait for the harvest. But when it comes, and it will come, it will be more than you imagined. Because the subconscious mind, once fully aligned with your goals and your vision, becomes an unstoppable engine of creation. Start right now, not tomorrow, not after the weekend, right now. Take a piece of paper and write down 3 beliefs that have been holding you back. Write them as honestly as you can. Maybe it is the belief that you are not worthy of love. Maybe it is the belief that you will never have enough money. Maybe it is the belief that you are not smart enough, or talented enough, or strong enough to reach the goals you have been quietly dreaming about for years. Write them down, look at them, and then, beside each one, write the new belief that you are choosing to install in its place. Write it in the present tense. Write it with certainty. Write it as if it is already your reality. Because from this moment forward, that is the message you will be sending to your subconscious mind every single day. Your life right now is a reflection of the programs that have been running inside you. Every relationship you have, every financial situation you are in, every feeling you carry about yourself when you are alone in the quiet of your own mind, all of it is a printout of what your subconscious mind currently believes to be true. And that means that changing your life does not begin with changing your circumstances, it begins with changing what is happening inside you. When the inside changes, the outside must follow. This is not wishful thinking. This is the way the human mind actually works. You are not broken, you are not behind. You are not too old, or too young, or too far gone. You are simply someone who has been running programs that were installed without your full consent. And now you have the awareness to do something about it. Now you have the understanding to begin the process of reprogramming. Now you have the tools to start feeding your most powerful internal system the information it needs to build the life you actually deserve. The power has always been inside you. It has been there every single day of your life, working quietly in the background, shaping everything you experience. The only difference now is that you are aware of it. You are ready to work with it. You are ready to stop being a passenger in your own life and step fully into the role of creator. Because that is what you are. You are not a product of your past. You are not a prisoner of your circumstances. You are a creator, and your subconscious mind is the most powerful creative tool in the universe. It is yours. It has always been yours. And starting right now, you are going to use it. Speak to it with intention. Feed it with purpose. Trust the process even when you cannot yet see the results. Stay consistent even when the old patterns try to pull you back. Because they will try. The old programs do not disappear quietly. They will show up as doubt. They will show up as distraction. They will show up as the voice in your head that says, "This will not work." When that happens, do not fight that voice. Simply notice it. Understand that it is just an old program running its last few cycles, and return your focus to the new belief you are building. Over time, the old voice will get quieter, the new one will get stronger, and one day you will wake up and realize that the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you move through the world has completely changed. Not because your circumstances changed first, but because you changed first, and everything else followed. That is the power of your subconscious mind. It works faster than you think. It works deeper than you know. And when you truly commit to working with it, when you truly commit to feeding it the right material, and staying the course no matter what, it will produce results that will leave you in awe. Results that will make people around you stop and ask what happened to you. Results that will make you realize that everything you wanted was always within reach. You just needed to unlock the door from the inside. The awakening has already begun. Chapter 2. Reprogram your thoughts and transform your entire life. Every single thought you have is either building you up or tearing you down. There is no neutral ground. There is no thought that simply passes through without leaving any kind of trace. Each thought you entertain, each idea you let linger in your mind, each story you keep telling yourself about who you are and what you are capable of, all of it is doing something to you. It is either expanding your possibilities or shrinking them. It is either moving you toward the life you want or pulling you further away from it. And the extraordinary thing is that you have far more control over this process than you have ever been told. Most people treat their thoughts the way they treat the weather. They assume thoughts just happen. They assume they have no say in what shows up in their minds or how long it stays there. They wake up and whatever thoughts arrive, they accept them as truth. If fear shows up, they accept it as a sign that something is dangerous. If doubt shows up, they accept it as evidence that they are not ready. If negativity floods their mind first thing in the morning, they carry that weight through the rest of their day without ever questioning where it came from or whether it deserves to be there. This is not living with intention. This is being lived by your own untrained mind. Reprogramming your thoughts is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is not about forcing fake positivity on top of genuine pain. It is about taking back your role as the director of what happens inside your own head. It is about understanding that a thought is not a fact just because it feels real. It is about developing the ability to look at a thought, evaluate it honestly, and decide whether it deserves the energy you are giving it. That ability is a skill, and like every skill, it can be developed, it can be practiced, and it can become so natural that it transforms the entire experience of being you. The human brain has a property that scientists call neuroplasticity. In the simplest possible terms, this means your brain physically changes based on what you repeatedly think about and repeatedly do. Every thought you think travels along a neural pathway in your brain. The more you think the same thought, the stronger and more efficient that pathway becomes. Think of it like a path through a field of tall grass. The first time you walk through that field, you have to push your way through. It takes effort. It feels uncomfortable. But the second time, the path is a little clearer. The third time, even clearer. After walking the same path 100 times, it becomes so well worn that your feet naturally gravitate toward it without any conscious effort at all. That is exactly how your thought patterns work. The thoughts you have most often become the easiest thoughts to have. They become automatic. They become the default. This is wonderful news if your most repeated thoughts are helpful, hopeful, and constructive. But for most people, the most well-worn paths in their minds are the paths of self-criticism, worry, comparison, and limitation. Not because those people are broken, not because they are weak, but because those paths were created during formative experiences and reinforced daily, often without any conscious awareness at all. The good news, and this is very good news, is that every single neural pathway in your brain can be weakened through disuse and replaced by a new pathway built through intentional repetition. Your brain is not fixed. It is not locked into the patterns it currently has. It is literally, physically capable of rewiring itself. And you are the one who gets to decide what it rewires into. The process begins with interruption. Before you can install a new thought pattern, you have to interrupt the old one, and you cannot interrupt something you are not aware of. So the first practice is to begin catching yourself in the act of thinking, not reviewing your thoughts after the fact, not judging yourself for what you thought an hour ago, but actually catching the thought while it is happening. This sounds simple, and in concept it is, but in practice it requires a kind of mental discipline that most people have never been taught. It requires you to have a part of your mind that is always watching the rest of your mind. Psychologists sometimes call this the observing self. It is the part of you that can step back and notice what is happening inside you without being completely swept away by it. Here is a practical way to begin developing this. Set an alarm on your phone for 3 different times throughout your day. When the alarm goes off, stop whatever you are doing for 30 seconds. Not a minute, just 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, ask yourself one question. What have I been thinking about for the last hour? Just observe. Do not judge the answer. Do not feel guilty about whatever you find. Simply notice. Are your thoughts mostly about problems or possibilities? Are they mostly about what is wrong or what could go right? Are they mostly about yourself with kindness or with criticism? The answers will tell you everything about the current programs running in your mind. And awareness of the program is always the first step toward changing it. Once you catch a thought that is not serving you, the next step is not to fight it. Fighting a thought actually gives it more power. When you resist something mentally, you are putting tremendous energy into it. And energy, directed at anything, tends to strengthen that thing. Instead of fighting the thought, simply name it. Just say to yourself, quietly or out loud, that this is a fear thought, or this is a doubt thought, or this is an old story. Naming the thought immediately creates a small but very important distance between you and the thought. It reminds you that you are not the thought, you are the one observing the thought. And from that position of being the observer, rather than being consumed by the thought, you now have a choice. You can let it continue, or you can redirect. Redirection is where the real reprogramming happens. When you catch a limiting thought, and you have named it, you replace it immediately with a thought that is directionally better, not necessarily a thought that feels perfect or completely true in this moment. Just a thought that is pointed in a better direction. If the thought that showed up was that you are going to fail, you do not have to immediately convince yourself that you are absolutely going to succeed in every possible way. That leap might feel too large, and your mind might reject it. Instead, take a smaller step. Tell yourself that you have handled difficult situations before, and you can handle this one too. Tell yourself that you do not need to know the entire path right now, just the next step. Tell yourself that you are learning and growing and getting better. These are thoughts your mind can actually accept. And each time you redirect in this way, you are starting to build a new neural pathway. You are starting to lay down a new track. The speed at which this works depends entirely on 2 things: frequency and emotional intensity. Repetition alone will create change over time, But when you attach genuine emotion to the new thought, the change happens significantly faster. Your brain uses emotion as a signal to determine what is important. Strong emotional experiences get encoded deeply and rapidly. This is why traumatic events can create lasting change in a person's psychology after just one experience. The emotion was intense enough to carve a deep groove immediately. You can use this same mechanism consciously and deliberately for your own benefit. When you practice a new thought, do not just think it flatly. Feel it. Let the emotion of the better version of yourself wash through you as you hold that thought. Breathe deeply while you do it. Let your body respond to the thought the way it would respond if that thought were completely and undeniably true. The combination of the thought and the genuine physical feeling is what creates the kind of deep reprogramming that actually lasts. There is a particular kind of thought pattern that derails more people than almost any other. It is called all or nothing thinking. It is the habit of seeing everything in extremes. Either something is a complete success, or it is a total failure. Either you are fully committed, or you have completely fallen off track. Either the day went perfectly, or the whole day was ruined. This pattern is one of the most destructive mental habits a person can carry, because it makes sustainable progress almost impossible. Real growth does not happen in perfect straight lines. It happens in messy, uneven, sometimes frustrating increments. And if your mind is wired to dismiss any result that is not perfect, you will spend your entire life feeling like you are failing, even when you are actually moving forward. Start training yourself to recognize and value incremental progress. When something goes partially right, notice that. When you handle something a little better than you would have handled it 6 months ago, acknowledge that. When you catch a negative thought and redirect it even once in a day, count that as a genuine win, because it is. These small victories are not small at all. They are the individual bricks that build the entire structure of a transformed life. The person you are becoming is assembled one thought, one choice, one moment at a time. And every single one of those moments matters. Another thought pattern worth examining carefully is the habit of comparison. When you spend time measuring your life against the lives of others, you are almost always comparing their external presentation to your internal experience. You see what someone else is showing to the world, and you compare it to everything you know about your own struggles, your own doubts, your own private fears. It is not a fair comparison. It never can be. And it almost always produces a feeling of inadequacy that has nothing to do with your actual situation. The truth is that everyone you admire has a version of the same internal battle you are fighting. They have their own fears, their own doubts, their own moments of wondering if they are enough. The difference between the people who move forward and the people who stay stuck is not the absence of those thoughts. It is the decision not to let those thoughts make the final call. Your thoughts about other people are also shaping you more than you realize. The way you think about the people around you, whether with judgment and resentment or with understanding and generosity, is building a mental environment that you then have to live inside. When you spend significant mental energy judging others, criticizing them, feeling bitter about what they have or what they have done, that energy does not just stay focused on them. It fills your own mind. It colors your own experience. It creates a kind of internal atmosphere that makes it harder to feel good about your own life. This is not a moral argument. It is a practical one. The quality of your thoughts about others directly affects the quality of your experience of being yourself. One of the most underestimated tools for thought reprogramming is writing. There is something that happens when you move a thought out of your mind and onto paper. It becomes something you can look at objectively rather than something you are trapped inside. Take 10 minutes each morning, before anything else, and write whatever is in your mind. Do not edit. Do not worry about grammar or structure or whether it sounds intelligent. Just write. Get everything out. The worries, the frustrations, the fears, the hopes, the random thoughts that have been circling. Get them all out onto the page. What you will find, very quickly, is that many of the thoughts that felt heavy and overwhelming inside your head become far less powerful when you can see them written out in front of you. You can look at them and evaluate them. You can ask yourself whether they are actually true. You can ask yourself what a wiser, calmer version of you would think about this situation. And then you can write that down too. This process externalizes your inner world long enough for you to examine it with some clarity and then choose something better. The language you use when you talk to yourself and about yourself is one of the most powerful forces shaping your mental reality. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they care about. They call themselves stupid when they make a mistake. They tell themselves they cannot do something before they have even tried. They describe themselves to others using language that minimizes their worth and their capability. And every time they do this, they are reinforcing neural pathways that make those descriptions feel more and more like the truth. You have to become very deliberate about the words you use when referring to yourself. Not to protect your ego, but because the words you use consistently become the frame through which your subconscious mind interprets your identity, and your behavior will always align with your identity eventually. Begin paying attention to the phrases you use most often about yourself. If you regularly say that you are bad with money, your subconscious mind will continue to create behaviors that make that true. If you regularly say that you are not a morning person, your body will keep finding it difficult to rise with energy. If you regularly say that relationships are hard for you, that belief will keep showing up in your experiences. You do not have to switch immediately to the opposite extreme, but you can stop using language that locks you into a limited version of yourself. You can begin using language that leaves space for growth. Instead of saying you are bad at something, you can say you are still working on it. Instead of saying you cannot, you can say you have not yet. These are small shifts in wording, but the direction they point your mind is completely different. The thoughts you entertain about the future are also worth examining. Many people live in a state of chronic mental rehearsal for worst-case scenarios. They imagine in vivid detail everything that could go wrong, every way a situation could fall apart, every reason something might not work out. And because the subconscious mind responds to vivid mental imagery the way it responds to real experience, this kind of thinking is literally training your mind and body to expect failure, to prepare for loss, to brace for the worst. You are using the incredible creative power of your mind in reverse. You are creating simulations of the life you do not want, and then feeling the emotions of those simulations as if they are real. And then you wonder why you feel anxious and drained and stuck. Begin practicing what might be called future positive thinking. This is not naive optimism. It is not pretending that challenges do not exist. It is the deliberate practice of also spending time imagining things going right. Spend time, real dedicated time, thinking about what it would look and feel like if your next important meeting went well, what it would feel like if your health improved steadily over the next 6 months, what it would feel like if the relationship you care about deepened and grew stronger. Let yourself imagine these scenarios with the same level of detail and emotional investment that most people reserve for their worries. You are not lying to yourself. You are training your mind toward possibility. You are building the neural pathways of success before the success has actually arrived, and in doing so, you are making it significantly more likely that you will recognize the opportunities and take the actions that lead to those outcomes when they appear. Nobody transforms their life by accident. Every person who has ever fundamentally changed, who has gone from stuck to free, from anxious to grounded, from small to expansive, did it through the consistent, deliberate practice of thinking differently. They did not wait until they felt like it. They did not wait until the evidence showed up first. They changed their thoughts while the evidence was still pointing the other way. They kept showing up for their own mental training when it felt difficult and uncertain and like maybe nothing was changing. And then one day, something shifted, not because of one dramatic moment, but because of the accumulated weight of all those daily choices to think better, to redirect, to choose a more powerful story. You are capable of that same transformation, not someday, right now, starting with the very next thought that shows up in your mind today. You do not need to overhaul your entire thinking in one afternoon. You just need to make one better choice, and then another, and then another. Stack those choices across days and weeks and months, and the person looking back at you in the mirror will be someone you are genuinely proud of. Someone who is no longer driven by old programs and unconscious patterns. Someone who has taken back the reins of their own mind. Someone who thinks with purpose, with clarity, and with the full understanding that every thought is either an investment in the life you want or a cost against it. Your thoughts are the blueprint. Your life is the building. Change the blueprint, and over time, everything built from it changes too. Chapter 3. Release old beliefs that have been holding you back. Somewhere along the way, someone handed you a story about who you are. Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a friend who said something careless without realizing the weight their words would carry. Maybe it was a moment of failure so sharp and so public that your mind decided right then and there to protect you from ever feeling that way again. Whatever it was, however it happened, a belief was formed. A belief about your worth, your capability, your place in the world. And from that day forward, that belief began quietly doing its job. Not loudly, not obviously, but steadily and consistently, shaping every decision you made, every opportunity you reached for or walked away from, every version of yourself you allowed yourself to become. The most dangerous beliefs are not the ones you know you have. The most dangerous beliefs are the ones you have stopped questioning, the ones that feel so natural, so deeply familiar, that they no longer seem like beliefs at all. They seem like facts. They seem like just the way things are. You do not even notice them anymore because they have become the invisible architecture of your entire inner world. You think through them. You feel through them. You interpret everything that happens to you through the lens they provide. And because everything seems to confirm what you already believe, you never stop to ask whether the belief itself was ever actually true to begin with. A belief is not a fact. This distinction is one of the most important things you will ever internalize. A fact is something that exists in observable reality, independent of what any person thinks about it. A belief is an idea that a mind has decided is true, usually based on a limited set of experiences from a specific period of time under specific emotional conditions. The problem is that your brain does not store these two things differently. To your mind, a deeply held belief and an established fact can feel completely identical. Both feel certain. Both feel obvious. Both feel like something you would be foolish to question. But one of them is open to examination and revision, and that revision can change absolutely everything. Think about where your most influential beliefs were actually formed. Many of them came from childhood, a time when your brain was in a highly receptive state, absorbing information rapidly and building a model of the world without the benefit of critical thinking or life experience to evaluate what was coming in. Children are not equipped to say that an adult who is criticizing them might be wrong. Children are not equipped to recognize that a failure in one area does not define their entire capability. Children are not equipped to understand that the limitations of the people raising them are not the limitations of the universe. So they take in what happens around them and to them, and they build beliefs from it. Beliefs that feel as solid and real as the ground beneath their feet. Beliefs that then travel with them into adulthood like invisible luggage, heavier with every passing year. You may have grown up in an environment where money was always scarce, and the adults around you spoke about it with stress and fear. Without anyone ever saying it directly, you absorbed the belief that money is hard to come by, that wanting more than you have is somehow greedy, that people like you do not live the kind of lives you see others living. That belief went underground decades ago, and now it influences every financial decision you make, every opportunity you hesitate before, Every ceiling you unconsciously bump up against when things start going well. Not because the belief is true, but because your mind accepted it as true a very long time ago and has been faithfully operating from it ever since. Or perhaps you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where affection was given when you performed well and withdrawn when you fell short, where you learned, without anyone spelling it out, that you had to earn your place in the hearts of the people around you. That belief did not stay in childhood. It followed you into every relationship you have ever had. It made you work too hard to keep people happy. It made you afraid to express what you actually need. It made you interpret moments of distance or conflict as evidence that you are about to be abandoned. And it exhausted you in ways you could not fully explain because you did not know you were carrying a belief that was driving all of it. This is the invisible weight that old beliefs place on a human life. And the reason most people never fully examine them is that doing so feels threatening. These beliefs, even the painful ones, feel like home. They are what you know, they are what has always been there, and there is a part of the mind that equates the familiar with the safe, even when the familiar is causing suffering. Letting go of an old belief, even a limiting one, can feel like losing something, like stepping off solid ground. Because if that belief is not true, then what else might not be true? And who are you if you are not the person that belief has been describing all these years? That question is actually the beginning of freedom. Who are you without the belief that you are not enough? Who are you without the belief that success is for other people? Who are you without the belief that you always mess things up when they start to go well? The answer is that you are vast. You are capable of things that your limited beliefs have never allowed you to access. You are someone who has been living in a house with most of the rooms locked, and you have been walking the same few hallways for so long that you forgot the other rooms exist. They do exist, and releasing old beliefs is the process of finding the keys. The first step in releasing a belief is to surface it. You cannot release what you cannot see. And because limiting beliefs have often become invisible through familiarity, surfacing them requires some deliberate investigation. One of the most effective ways to do this is to look at the areas of your life where you feel stuck or where you keep experiencing the same unwanted outcomes. Not because you are incompetent, but because a belief is quietly running the show in that area. If you keep ending up in relationships that feel unequal, there is a belief underneath that. If your finances keep hitting the same ceiling no matter how hard you work, there is a belief underneath that. If you keep starting projects with tremendous energy and then abandoning them before completion, there is a belief underneath that. The pattern is the fingerprint of the belief. Follow the pattern back to its source. Ask yourself a question that might feel uncomfortable. Ask yourself what you would have to believe about yourself or about the world for this pattern to make complete sense. For each recurring struggle in your life, there is a belief that makes that struggle feel inevitable or familiar, or even somehow deserved. When you can identify that belief, name it clearly and specifically, you have done something most people never do. You have brought what was unconscious into conscious awareness, and that shift alone begins to loosen the grip. Once you have named the belief, the next step is to question it rigorously, not emotionally, not defensively, but with genuine intellectual curiosity. Ask yourself, when you first started believing this, try to trace it back. Was there a specific experience, a specific person, a specific moment? Understanding where a belief came from does not excuse the pain it has caused, but it does depersonalize it. When you can see that a belief was formed by a limited mind in a limited moment, under limited circumstances, it becomes harder to treat it as absolute truth. It becomes what it actually is, an interpretation. A conclusion drawn by a younger, less experienced version of you, doing the best they could with what they had at the time. Then ask yourself, what evidence actually exists to support this belief right now in your present life? Not the evidence that existed when the belief was formed. Not the evidence that the belief itself has helped create over the years, but genuine, objective evidence in your current reality. You will often find that when you hold the belief up to real scrutiny, the evidence is far weaker than it felt. The belief has been surviving not on evidence but on assumption, on emotional momentum, on the sheer force of repetition, and when you see that, something changes. The belief loses a layer of its solidity. It becomes something you are reconsidering rather than something you are simply living inside. After questioning the evidence for the old belief, begin building the case for the new one. Ask yourself what evidence exists in your life that contradicts the old belief. Have you ever succeeded at something this belief says you cannot do? Have you ever shown a quality this belief says you do not have? Have you ever received something this belief says you do not deserve? Look honestly, look carefully, because I can promise you the evidence is there. People are always more than their limiting beliefs about themselves. The problem is that a mind operating from a limiting belief is very skilled at filtering out the contradicting evidence and amplifying the confirming evidence. It does not do this maliciously. It does it because that is how confirmation bias works. The mind looks for what it already expects to find. So you have to consciously and deliberately look for what the belief has been causing you to overlook. There is an emotional dimension to releasing old beliefs that cannot be skipped. Many limiting beliefs are not just intellectual conclusions, they are emotionally charged. They are tied to experiences that were painful. Sometimes they are tied to grief, to loss, to betrayal, to experiences that left a mark so deep that the belief formed as a way of making sense of something that felt senseless. And releasing the belief sometimes means allowing yourself to feel what you never fully felt at the time. To grieve a version of your past that deserved better. To acknowledge that something hard happened, that it shaped you, and that you are now choosing to no longer let it define you. This is not weakness. This is some of the bravest work a human being can do. Forgiveness plays a role here that is often misunderstood. Forgiveness, when it comes to releasing old beliefs, is not about the people or experiences that contributed to those beliefs. It is not about saying that what happened was acceptable. It is about releasing yourself from the ongoing cost of carrying resentment as part of your identity. Because when a belief is rooted in something painful that someone did to you, releasing the belief often requires releasing the emotional charge of that experience. Not for their benefit, for yours. Holding on to the pain keeps you energetically connected to it, and you cannot fully step into who you are becoming while you are still emotionally anchored to who you were wounded into being. Practical release techniques matter enormously here. One of the most powerful is what some psychologists call belief restructuring through written dialogue. Take a piece of paper, and at the top, write the limiting belief you have identified. Then write out every argument you can think of against that belief. Write why it might not be true. Write the experiences that contradict it. Write what a deeply wise and loving mentor would say to someone who held this belief. Write the belief you want to replace it with. Write why that new belief is at least as valid as the old one, probably more so. Then read what you have written out loud. There is something about the combination of written thought and spoken word that creates a much stronger impression on your mind than silent thinking alone. Repeat this process for different beliefs across multiple days. You are not just thinking differently, you are physically recording new neural architecture. Another technique is what might be called belief testing through deliberate action. One of the most effective ways to dissolve a belief is to take an action that directly contradicts it and observe what happens. If you believe that you are not capable of public speaking, the belief thrives in avoidance. Every time you avoid speaking in front of others, you are confirming the belief without even realizing it. But if you take a small step, not a giant leap, just a small step toward the thing the belief says you cannot do, and you survive it, and you even do it somewhat decently, the belief receives a crack, and every subsequent step creates another crack. Until one day, the belief simply cannot hold its structure anymore, because the evidence of your actual experience has demolished its foundations. The environment you surround yourself with is also either supporting your old beliefs or helping to dissolve them. If everyone in your immediate circle believes that life is difficult and success is reserved for the privileged, those beliefs will feel validated every day simply by the conversations you are part of. If the content you consume, the voices you listen to, the stories you absorb, all consistently reflect a limited view of what is possible, your mind will accept that limitation as normal. Changing your environment does not always mean changing the people in your life, though sometimes that is part of it. It means deliberately and consistently introducing yourself to evidence that your old beliefs are not universal. Read the stories of people who started where you started and arrived somewhere you want to go. Listen to voices that carry a different frequency than the one your old beliefs operate on. Let those voices become part of your daily mental diet until the message that more is possible stops feeling like an exception and starts feeling like the rule. There is a particular belief that quietly undermines more people than almost any other, and it is so common that it has almost become invisible. It is the belief that change has to be hard, that growth requires suffering, that if something feels too good or too easy, it probably will not last. This belief causes people to unconsciously sabotage their own progress when things start going well. They create problems where none existed. They pull back when they should move forward. They find ways to return to the familiar difficulty because ease feels unsafe and unfamiliar. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, know that it comes from a belief, not from reality. Growth can be challenging without being punishing. Good things can last. You are allowed to succeed without paying for it in pain. That permission is not something anyone else can give you. You have to give it to yourself by releasing the belief that says otherwise. The beliefs you hold about time are also worth examining. Many people believe that it is too late, that they missed their window, that the best years were behind them, or that the opportunities they needed passed while they were not paying attention. This belief is one of the most limiting a person can carry because it removes all sense of agency from the future. If it is already too late, why try? If the window has closed, what is the point of working toward anything? But this belief, like all beliefs, is not a fact. It is a story. And history is full of people who began their most significant chapters far later in life than convention says they should have. The belief that it is too late is never about the actual clock. It is about the fear of trying and failing, dressed up in the language of timing. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where a person would be who is just now beginning to release the beliefs that have been slowing them down. And from this point, from exactly where you are standing right now, everything is still possible. The road ahead is not shorter because of the time that has passed. It is simply more informed. You now carry wisdom that you could not have had earlier. You now have the awareness to make choices that a younger, less conscious version of you could not have made. That is not a disadvantage. That is an extraordinary resource. Releasing old beliefs is not a one-time event. It is a practice, a commitment, an ongoing process of choosing, again and again, to examine the stories your mind tells you and to keep asking whether those stories are actually serving the life you are trying to build. Some beliefs will dissolve quickly once you bring them into the light. Others will require patient and persistent work. Some will seem to disappear and then quietly resurface under stress. When that happens, it does not mean you failed. It simply means the work is continuing, and the work is always worth doing. Every old belief you release creates space. Space for a truer understanding of who you are. Space for new possibilities you could not see from inside the old story. Space for relationships and experiences and achievements that the old belief was quietly blocking. The life you have been imagining, the one that feels just out of reach, is not being held back by your circumstances nearly as much as it is being held back by what you believe about your worthiness to have it. Change the belief, and the circumstances begin to shift in response. Not as magic, but as the natural consequence of a mind that is finally free enough to see clearly, choose wisely, and act with the full force of its genuine potential. Let go of the story that was given to you before you were old enough to question it. It served a purpose at the time. It helped you make sense of a world that was sometimes confusing and painful. But that story is not your destiny. You are the author of what comes next, and the most powerful chapter of your life begins the moment you put down the old script and pick up a pen. Chapter 4. Build unstoppable confidence through daily subconscious mind training. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in human experience. Most people spend years waiting for it to arrive. They tell themselves they will speak up when they feel more confident. They tell themselves they will apply for that position, start that business, have that conversation, pursue that dream, as soon as they feel ready. As soon as that feeling of certainty and courage shows up and settles permanently into their chest. But here is what nobody told them, and what is about to change everything for you right now. Confidence does not come before the action. Confidence is built by the action. It is not a prerequisite for doing hard things. It is a result of having done them. And the moment you understand that, the entire equation of how you build confidence shifts completely. The version of confidence that most people are chasing is a fantasy. It is the idea that one day you will wake up and simply feel certain. Certain about your worth, certain about your ability, certain about your path. Certain enough that the fear disappears and you can move forward without hesitation. That version of confidence does not exist, not for anyone. The people you look at and describe as confident are not people who never feel afraid. They are people who have developed a deep enough relationship with themselves, a strong enough internal foundation, that fear no longer has the power to stop them. They feel the uncertainty and they move anyway. That capacity is not something they were born with. It is something they trained, daily, consistently, often invisibly. And it is something you can train too. Your subconscious mind holds the blueprint of how you see yourself. Not the image you present to the world, not the version of yourself you perform for other people, but the deep, quiet, internal image of who you believe you actually are. Psychologists call this the self-concept, and your self-concept is the single most powerful predictor of your behavior in any given situation. You will almost never consistently act in ways that contradict your self-concept. If your self-concept says you are someone who struggles in social situations, you will find ways to struggle even when the situation itself is not objectively difficult. If your self-concept says you are someone who is not naturally a leader, you will unconsciously step back in moments that call for you to step forward. Your behavior is always trying to stay consistent with who you believe yourself to be at the subconscious level, which means that building unstoppable confidence is not primarily about changing your behavior. It is about changing the self-concept that is generating the behavior. And here is the extraordinary thing. Your self-concept is not permanent. It is not carved into stone. It was built from experiences, and it can be rebuilt through new experiences, both real and vividly imagined. The subconscious mind, as you already know from the ground you have covered so far, does not make a clean distinction between something you have actually experienced and something you have experienced in vivid mental detail. This means that you can begin to build a new self-concept, a more confident self-concept, through deliberate and consistent daily practice, even before your external circumstances have changed at all. The daily training of your subconscious mind for confidence operates on a very specific principle. What you rehearse internally, you eventually become externally. Every athlete who performs at the highest level understands this. Before a major competition, elite performers do not just train their physical bodies. They train their minds. They sit quietly and run through their performance in precise mental detail. They feel the movement. They feel the timing. They feel the sensation of executing perfectly. They are not just passing time. They are programming their nervous system with the experience of success before the success has actually happened, and their actual performance is elevated because of it. This same principle applies to every area of life, including the development of deep, genuine confidence. Begin a daily practice that takes no more than 10 minutes and has the potential to change how you show up in the world more significantly than almost anything else you will ever do. Every morning, before the noise of the day begins, sit somewhere quiet and close your eyes. Take several slow, full breaths until your body begins to settle and your mind begins to quiet. Then, with your eyes still closed, begin to construct a very specific mental image. You are imagining a version of yourself who is fully, genuinely confident, not arrogant, not performative, but deeply, quietly, unmistakably sure of yourself. See how this version of you holds their body. Notice the posture, the way the shoulders sit, the way the head is positioned, the ease in the facial expression. Notice how this version of you moves through a room. Notice the quality of the voice, the steadiness in the eyes, the calmness that this person radiates, even in situations that would normally trigger anxiety. Now step into that image. Stop watching it from the outside and move inside it. Feel what it feels like to be that person from the inside. Feel what your body feels like when confidence is your natural state. Feel what it is like to enter a difficult conversation without your heart racing with panic. Feel what it is like to stand in front of people and speak without your voice trembling from self-doubt. Feel what it is like to be presented with an opportunity and feel your first instinct as eagerness rather than fear. Spend several minutes inside this felt experience. Let your body physically respond to it. Let your breathing change. Let your posture respond. Let the physical sensation of confidence become something your body can recognize and remember. You are training your subconscious mind to treat this state as familiar. And what the subconscious mind treats as familiar, it begins to reproduce automatically. The body is not separate from this process. The relationship between physical posture and psychological state is more powerful and more bidirectional than most people realize. Research in human psychology has established clearly that the position of your body influences the chemistry of your mind. When you adopt postures associated with confidence, when you stand tall, when you take up space without apologizing for it, when you breathe from deep in your chest rather than shallow in your throat, your body actually changes its internal chemistry in response. It reduces the stress hormones that create the physical feeling of anxiety and increases the hormones associated with confidence and readiness. Your body does not just express what your mind feels, your body also tells your mind what to feel, and you can use this deliberately. Make a conscious decision about how you are going to carry your body today. Not occasionally, not when you remember, but as a consistent daily choice that you make from the moment you wake up. How you sit when you are alone matters. How you walk down a hallway when nobody important is watching matters. How you breathe when you are waiting in a difficult situation matters. Every time you choose the physical posture of confidence, you are sending a signal to your subconscious mind that this is who you are, that this is how this person, you, operates in the world. And your mind will begin to align your thoughts and your emotional responses with that signal. Over days and weeks of consistent practice, this becomes less of an effort and more of an identity. You are not performing confidence anymore, you are becoming it. One of the deepest roots of low confidence is a habit of thinking that most people do not even recognize as a habit. It is the tendency to replay past failures, past embarrassments, past moments of rejection or inadequacy in vivid mental detail over and over again, long after the events themselves have ended. Something difficult happens. Maybe you gave a presentation that did not go the way you hoped. Maybe you said something in a social situation that landed awkwardly. Maybe you tried something and fell short. The event lasts for minutes, but the mental replay can last for days, weeks, even years. Every time you replay it, your nervous system experiences it again as if it is happening right now. And your confidence, which is built or eroded by the accumulated experience your nervous system carries, takes a hit every single time. You have to become aware of this replay habit and interrupt it deliberately, not by pretending the difficult experience did not happen, but by refusing to give it more screen time than it deserves. When you notice yourself replaying a painful memory with the intensity of someone watching it for the first time, pause, take a breath, and then deliberately and consciously shift your mental focus to a memory of a moment when you succeeded, when you handled something well, when you showed up with more strength than you expected, when someone told you that something you did or said made a difference to them. Hold that memory with the same vividness and detail that you were just giving to the painful one. Feel it. Let it land in your body the way the difficult memory was landing. You are not deluding yourself. You are balancing the input your subconscious mind is receiving. Because for most people, the ledger is heavily weighted toward negative replays and almost empty of positive ones. That imbalance is directly responsible for how shaky confidence feels. There is a practice that genuinely transforms confidence over time, and it requires no special equipment and no particular skill. It requires only honesty and consistency. At the end of each day, before you sleep, take 3 minutes to write down 3 specific things you did that day that you can genuinely credit yourself for. Not massive achievements. Not things that will make headlines, just genuine, honest moments where you chose well, where you showed up, where you did something that the fearful version of you might have avoided. Maybe you spoke up in a meeting when you felt nervous about it. Maybe you chose a healthier option when your impulse said otherwise. Maybe you reached out to someone when you felt the pull of isolation. Maybe you kept a commitment to yourself that an older version of you would have broken. Write these things down specifically. Not in vague terms, in detail. This daily practice accomplishes something very specific. It trains your mind to scan your day for evidence of your own capability instead of scanning it for evidence of your inadequacy. And what the mind scans for consistently, it finds more and more of. Over time, your brain begins to build a rich, detailed, internally verified record of your own competence. And that record becomes the foundation of genuine confidence. There is something that sits beneath confidence and makes it sustainable. Something that people talk about less often than they should. That thing is self-respect. Not the self-respect you perform for others, the self-respect you practice in private. The self-respect that shows up in the promises you keep to yourself, in the standards you hold yourself to when nobody is watching, in the way you treat your own time, your own body, your own energy. Confidence that is built on top of a foundation of broken self-promises and chronic self-neglect is fragile. It will collapse the moment serious pressure arrives. But confidence that is built on top of a consistent track record of honoring your own commitments, of treating yourself with the same care and respect that you would give to someone you deeply value, that kind of confidence has roots. It holds under pressure. It does not require constant external validation to survive because it is fed from within. Start very small with this. Choose one commitment to yourself, just one, and keep it for an entire week without exception. It does not matter how small it is. The size of the commitment is not the point. The point is the experience of saying you will do something and then doing it. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you are depositing something into your internal account of self-trust. And self-trust is another name for confidence. The person who trusts themselves to follow through is the person who moves through the world with ease and certainty, not because the world has become easier, but because they know, based on evidence from their own behavior, that they can be counted on, that they will not abandon themselves when things get difficult. Daily subconscious training for confidence also involves being very intentional about the voices you allow into your inner world. Every person, every voice, every piece of content you give your sustained attention to is contributing to the ongoing conversation your subconscious mind is having with itself. If the dominant voices in your daily life are voices of criticism, doubt, cynicism, or fear, your subconscious mind will weave those frequencies into its baseline. If the dominant voices are voices of possibility, growth, discipline, and genuine achievement, those frequencies will become part of the internal environment you are living in. This is not about being naive to the challenges of the world. It is about being deliberate, about what you allow to shape your deepest sense of what is possible for you. Create a daily practice of deliberate input. Choose one piece of content, a book, a recording, a person's story, that genuinely expands your sense of what a human being can achieve. Give it your real attention, not as background noise while you do something else, but as a genuine investment of your focused presence. Let it work on you. Let it challenge the limits of what you believe about yourself. Let it show you, in real and specific detail, that the qualities you think you lack are qualities that were developed through consistent practice by people who once lacked them too. The confidence you are building is not a gift you are waiting to receive. It is a structure you are building brick by brick, and every day of deliberate input adds another brick. Comparison is one of the most efficient ways to dismantle confidence that has taken significant effort to build. And in a world that is designed to show you the highlight reel of everyone else's life simultaneously, the pull toward comparison has never been stronger or more constant. What makes comparison so destructive to confidence is the asymmetry of information it operates on. When you compare yourself to another person, you are comparing everything you know about your inner world, your doubts, your struggles, your private fears, your worst moments, to the curated, polished, carefully selected version of that other person that they have chosen to present. You are comparing your blooper reel to their trailer, and your confidence gets crushed by a comparison that was never fair to begin with. The antidote is not to stop noticing other people's achievements. It is to redirect the energy of comparison toward a different subject. Instead of measuring yourself against someone else's journey, measure yourself against your own. Who were you 6 months ago? What did you believe then that you have since released? What did you avoid then that you now move toward? What would the version of you from 2 years ago think about the person reading these words right now? In almost every case, you will find that you have grown more than you have given yourself credit for. And that growth, when you genuinely acknowledge it, produces a quality of confidence that no external comparison can touch, because it is rooted in evidence of your own real development over real time. There will be days in this training process when nothing seems to be working, days when the old self-doubt floods back in, despite everything you are doing, days when you try the mental rehearsal and it feels hollow, days when you look in the mirror and the reflection does not yet match the self-concept you are trying to build. These days are not evidence that the process does not work. They are a normal and necessary part of how deep change actually happens. The path of genuine transformation is not linear. It goes forward, and then it seems to plateau. It climbs, and then it dips. And the people who eventually arrive at a place of genuine, unshakable confidence are almost never the ones who found it easy. They are the ones who kept training on the days when it felt pointless, who kept showing up when the results were not yet visible, who understood that the days of difficulty were not interruptions to the training. They were the most important part of the training. Every time you continue practicing confidence on a day when you do not feel it, you are building something more valuable than confidence in easy conditions. You are building confidence in hard conditions. And hard conditions are the only conditions that actually test what you are made of. When you know that you can return to your practices, that you can breathe through the fear, that you can move forward, even when the feeling is not there, you develop a quality of confidence that is genuinely unstoppable. Because it does not depend on circumstances being favorable. It does not depend on other people's approval. It does not depend on everything going according to plan. It depends only on your own commitment to continue. And that is the one variable in your life that is fully within your control. The daily training of your subconscious mind is cumulative. Each day that you practice, you are adding to a foundation that becomes increasingly solid. Each mental rehearsal, each body posture held with intention, each commitment kept, each evidence collected of your own capability, each moment of choosing to continue when the old voice says to stop, all of it is building, quietly and consistently building. You may not see the full structure for weeks or months, but it is rising, And one day, you will face a situation that would have once stopped you cold, and you will find yourself moving through it with a steadiness that surprises even you. Not because you suddenly became someone different, but because the daily work of becoming someone different had finally reached a point where the transformation was undeniable. That is when you will understand, in a way that goes beyond reading or hearing, that confidence was never something you either had or did not have. It was always something you were building. It was always the result of how you chose to train your mind and move through the world every single day. And on that day, the journey you are beginning right now will make complete and perfect sense. Every step of it, every difficult morning, every moment of doubt you pushed through, every small commitment you honored when breaking it would have been so much easier. All of it will have led to this. A version of yourself that stands in their own life with certainty, with presence, with the deep and unshakable knowing that they are exactly capable of handling whatever comes next. That version of you is not far away. They are being built right now. One day, one practice, one conscious choice at a time. Chapter 5. Visualize your success until your brain fully believes it. There is a gap between where you are right now and where you want to be. Every person who has ever wanted more for their life knows this gap intimately. They feel it when they wake up in the morning. They feel it when they go to sleep at night. They feel it in the quiet moments when nobody is watching and they are alone with the honest truth of where their life currently stands versus where they truly believe it could go. Most people spend their lives staring at that gap with a mixture of longing and frustration, waiting for something outside of them to bridge it. What they do not know, what you are about to understand at a level that will permanently change how you approach your goals, is that the most powerful bridge across that gap is built inside your own mind before it ever materializes in the world around you. Visualization is not a concept invented by self-help culture. It is not wishful thinking dressed up in motivational language. It is a neurological process that operates according to well-documented principles of how the human brain functions. When you engage in vivid, detailed, emotionally rich mental imagery of a desired outcome, your brain processes that imagery using the same neural circuits it would use if the experience were actually happening in physical reality. Neuroscientists studying brain activity through imaging technology have found that the visual cortex, the motor cortex, and the emotional centers of the brain activate during intentional visualization in patterns remarkably similar to the patterns produced by real experience. Your brain, at the level of its electrical and chemical activity, does not fully distinguish between a richly imagined experience and a lived one. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable, observable, reproducible neuroscience. What this means practically is profound. It means that every time you sit down and deliberately construct a detailed mental image of yourself succeeding, of yourself achieving the goal, living the life, handling the situation with exactly the quality you want to bring to it, you are giving your brain an experience of that success. You are adding it to the library of experiences your nervous system draws on when it decides what is familiar, what is possible, and what is within your reach. You are expanding what your brain treats as normal for you. And as your brain's definition of your normal expands, your behavior, your decisions, and your perception of opportunity automatically begin to align with that expanded definition. The critical distinction that separates people who get results from visualization from those who try it and dismiss it as ineffective is the difference between passive imagining and active mental construction. Passive imagining is the kind of vague daydreaming most people do when they think about their goals. They have a fuzzy mental image of a better life. They think in general terms about being successful or being happy or being free. There is no sensory detail, there is no emotional engagement, there is no clarity about the specific scene they are constructing. It feels nice in a distant way, the way looking at a photograph of a place you would like to visit someday might feel nice, but it does not produce the neurological effect that creates real change. It does not move the needle because it does not move your nervous system. Active mental construction is a completely different practice. It requires you to engage your full attention in building a specific, detailed, sensory-rich mental scene. Not a vague feeling, but an actual experience that you are constructing and inhabiting in real time. And the richness of that construction, the depth of sensory and emotional detail you bring to it, is directly proportional to the neurological impact it has on your brain and therefore on your behavior in the real world. Here is how to approach this with genuine craft and intentionality. Begin by choosing one specific outcome you are working toward, not a collection of goals, not a general direction, one specific, concrete outcome. The more specific you are, the more your brain has to work with. Vague visualization produces vague results, because the brain cannot organize its resources around a target it cannot clearly define. So get specific. If the goal is a business outcome, know the exact number. If the goal is a physical one, know the exact state you are moving toward. If the goal is a relationship or a career outcome, know what that outcome looks like in specific, observable detail. What is happening in the scene you are about to visualize? Where are you? What time of day is it? What are you wearing? Who else is present? What has just happened? What are you doing in this moment of success? Now, and this is where most people's visualization practice falls short, bring all 5 senses into the experience. Vision is only one channel of sensory input, and not necessarily the most powerful one. Your nervous system responds to the full orchestra of sensory experience. What do you hear in this scene? Is there conversation happening around you? Is there a sound associated with this achievement? The sound of an audience, the sound of a notification, the sound of silence in a room where you are working with focus and ease. What do you feel physically? What does the air feel like? What does it feel like in your body to be in this moment? Is there warmth? Is there physical ease? Is there a particular sensation in your chest, or your shoulders, or your hands that you associate with success and fulfillment? Is there a smell, a taste? These questions might seem unusual, but the more sensory channels you activate during your visualization practice, the more of your brain is engaged. And more neural engagement means deeper programming. The emotional layer is the most powerful ingredient in the entire practice. You can construct a beautifully detailed sensory scene, but if you are observing it without genuine emotional engagement, it will not move your subconscious mind the way it needs to be moved. The emotion is the signal that tells your brain this matters. It is the chemical message that tells your nervous system to encode this experience deeply rather than let it pass through without leaving a trace. You have to feel the scene, not just see it. What is the emotion of this moment of success? Is it relief? Is it pride? Is it joy? Is it a deep sense of peace and rightness? The feeling that you are exactly where you were always meant to be. Whatever the emotion is, you need to summon it deliberately and let it fill your body while you are inside the visualization. Breathe it in. Let it expand in your chest. Let it move through your limbs. Your body does not know that the success has not happened yet. Your body only knows what it is feeling right now. And if it is feeling the emotions of success right now, your subconscious mind begins to orient everything, your attention, your energy, your behavior, your perception of possibility, toward making that emotional state a permanent feature of your experience. There are 2 distinct types of visualization, and both serve a specific and important purpose in your overall practice. The first is outcome visualization, which is what most people think of when they hear the word. This is the visualization of the end result, the goal achieved, the destination reached, the version of your life that you are working toward. Outcome visualization is powerful for establishing direction, for programming your subconscious mind with a clear target, and for generating the emotional fuel that sustains you through the difficult stretches of the journey. It answers the question of where you are going with a level of sensory and emotional clarity that keeps your motivation from fading when challenges arise. The second type is process visualization. This is less often discussed, but in many ways more immediately powerful for building the skills and behaviors that will actually get you to the outcome. Process visualization is the mental rehearsal of specific actions you need to take. The detailed inner practice of handling a difficult conversation skillfully before you have it. The mental walkthrough of executing a presentation with clarity and confidence before you stand in the room. The imagined experience of making the phone call, completing the workout, sitting down to do the focused work, navigating the challenging situation with exactly the quality of character you want to bring to it. Research consistently shows that people who mentally rehearse specific processes, not just desired outcomes, perform measurably better in those situations than people who have not rehearsed them. The brain has already run the circuit once. The body has already had the experience of moving through the challenge successfully. When the real moment arrives, it is familiar territory rather than unknown ground. Incorporate both types into your visualization practice. Begin with process visualization in the morning, when you can clearly see what the day holds. Identify the most challenging or most important thing you need to do today and spend several minutes mentally rehearsing it going well. Not perfectly, not without difficulty, but with you handling whatever comes with skill, calm, and genuine capability. Then use outcome visualization at times when you need to reconnect with the larger purpose driving all the daily work. When motivation dips, when the path feels long, when you need to remember why you are doing what you are doing. The combination of these two types creates a practice that is both immediately practical and deeply sustaining over the long arc of meaningful change. One of the most interesting discoveries in research on mental rehearsal concerns the perspective from which people visualize. Some people naturally visualize in first person, seeing the experience through their own eyes, the way you would see it if you were actually there. Others naturally visualize in third person, watching themselves from the outside, the way you would watch a film. Both perspectives have value, but they serve slightly different functions. First-person visualization tends to produce stronger sensory and emotional engagement because you are inside the experience. It is more immersive. It activates more of the neurological response associated with actually living the moment. Third-person visualization is particularly powerful for observing and modifying behavior patterns because you can see yourself from the outside and make adjustments to how you are moving, speaking, and carrying yourself. Experiment with both. Use first person when you want maximum emotional impact and sensory engagement. Use third person when you want to evaluate and refine how you are showing up in a particular situation. The frequency and consistency of your visualization practice matters far more than the length of any single session. A 10-minute daily practice, done without exception over 3 months, will produce dramatically more change than an hour-long practice done occasionally when you feel inspired. The subconscious mind is trained by repetition above all else. Each time you revisit the mental image with clarity and emotional engagement, you are reinforcing the neural pathway that corresponds to that image. You are making it more automatic, more dominant, more deeply integrated into the baseline experience of being you. Think of it the way you would think of physical training. A single intense workout does not build lasting strength. Consistent, regular, progressive training over time does. The same principle governs the training of your mind. Many people find that visualization feels difficult or unnatural at first. They sit down to practice and the images are vague, or they lose focus quickly, or the critical mind interrupts with thoughts about how this is silly or how it will not work. This is completely normal, and it does not mean you are doing it wrong or that you lack the ability. It simply means that intentional visualization is an unfamiliar skill, and your mind needs time to develop the capacity for sustained, focused mental construction. The way you develop that capacity is by practicing anyway. Start with shorter sessions if 5 or 10 minutes feels too long at first. 3 focused, genuinely engaged minutes is more valuable than 10 distracted ones. As you practice consistently, the images will become clearer. The emotional engagement will become more immediate. The ability to stay inside the scene without the critical mind pulling you out will improve significantly. What feels effortful now will become natural. What feels slightly artificial now will become one of the most powerful resources you have ever developed. There is a technique that significantly accelerates the effectiveness of visualization practice, and it involves what you do immediately before you begin. The state of your nervous system when you start the practice determines how receptive your subconscious mind is to the imagery you are about to create. When you are in a state of stress, mental agitation, or distraction, the critical part of your mind is highly active, and it evaluates everything that comes in with skepticism and resistance. When you are in a relaxed, calm, open state, the critical mind quiets, and the subconscious becomes significantly more accessible. This is why deliberately entering a relaxed physical state before beginning your visualization is not optional. It is the setup that allows the main practice to work at its full depth. Before you begin your visualization, take 5 to 7 slow, deep breaths. Each inhale should be full and complete, filling from the belly upward. Each exhale should be slow and deliberate, consciously releasing physical tension. With each breath, allow your body to settle a little more. Allow your shoulders to drop. Allow your jaw to unclench. Allow the space between your eyebrows to soften. You are not just relaxing, you are opening the door to the deeper levels of your mind, where the real reprogramming happens, and the images you place into that open, receptive state carry significantly more weight than the ones you try to force through a mind that is tense and defended. A vision board is one of the physical tools that can support and extend your visualization practice, not as a decoration or a piece of wishful thinking, but as a deliberate visual anchor for the mental work you are doing. A well-constructed vision board gives your eyes somewhere specific to rest when you want to enter your visualization practice. It holds representations of the outcomes you are working toward in a form that is externally visible. And because the brain processes visual input constantly, having images aligned with your goals in an environment where you spend significant time is a form of passive programming that reinforces the active work you do in your formal practice sessions. Choose images for your vision board that genuinely move something in you when you look at them. Not images you think you should want, images that trigger an authentic emotional response. Images that make something in you feel alive and hungry and sure. The emotional response is the signal that the image is genuinely connected to your real desires rather than to an idea about what you are supposed to want. Place the board where you will see it regularly. Let it catch your eye throughout the day. Each time it does, even for a few seconds, allow yourself to feel the emotion associated with those outcomes. Even brief moments of aligned emotion, accumulated consistently throughout the day, contribute to the overall programming of your subconscious mind. Something worth addressing directly is the experience of visualizing a desired outcome and feeling the gap between that vision and your current reality so sharply that it actually produces discouragement rather than motivation. This is a real and common experience. You imagine the life you want, and instead of feeling inspired, you feel the distance between where you are and where you want to be, and that distance feels overwhelming. When this happens, the solution is not to make your vision smaller. The solution is to also briefly acknowledge the steps, the specific and immediate next steps that exist between here and there. Research in psychology describes a practice called mental contrasting. It involves holding the positive vision of the desired future alongside an honest acknowledgement of the current reality and the specific obstacles that exist between them. This combination of future vision and present reality, when held together with clarity, tends to produce significantly stronger motivation and more concrete planning than either the positive vision alone or the realistic assessment alone. Your mind is not discouraged by the gap when it can also see a path across it. Show it both the destination and the next step toward it. The goals you are visualizing also need to feel genuinely yours, not borrowed from someone else's life, not adopted because they seem impressive or because they would look good from the outside. Deeply, authentically yours. The visualization process works most powerfully when the outcome you are imaging is something your whole self actually wants, not just the part of you that is trying to prove something or earn approval. If you sit down to visualize an outcome and it consistently feels hollow or flat, despite your best efforts to feel it emotionally, that is useful information. It may be telling you that this particular goal is not as genuinely yours as you thought. Or it may be telling you that there is a layer of fear or self-doubt sitting on top of the genuine desire, making it hard to fully inhabit the positive image. Either way, the flatness is worth investigating rather than powering through. The goals that are genuinely aligned with your authentic desires are the ones that will produce vivid, emotionally rich visualizations almost naturally. They will come alive in your mind because some part of you already knows they are the right destination. As your visualization practice deepens over weeks and months, you will begin to notice something unexpected and genuinely wonderful happening. You will begin to notice things in your environment that were always there, but that you were not previously seeing. Opportunities that align with your visualized goals. People whose paths intersect with yours in ways that seem relevant to where you are headed. Resources, information, ideas that appear to arrive at exactly the right time. Some people describe this as the universe responding. Others explain it through the neurological concept of the reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters incoming information and determines what reaches your conscious awareness. When your subconscious mind has been given a clear and repeatedly reinforced image of a desired outcome, your reticular activating system begins filtering reality in a way that highlights everything relevant to that outcome. It was always there. You simply could not see it before because you had not trained your mind to look for it. This is one of the most practically significant effects of consistent visualization. Your perception of reality literally changes. Not because reality has changed, because you have changed, because the lens through which you are experiencing your daily life has been ground by weeks and months of intentional mental training into a shape that reveals possibilities and pathways that were previously invisible to you. This is why visualization is not wishful thinking. It is strategic preparation of your most important instrument, your mind, for the task of building the life you actually want. The practice of seeing your success in full sensory detail every single day until the feeling of that success is as familiar as your own heartbeat is one of the most powerful investments of time and attention you will ever make. Because everything that has ever been built in the world, every business, every relationship, every achievement, every piece of art, every act of courage, was once a mental image before it was a physical reality. The image came first, always. Your life tomorrow is being constructed in your mind today. The question is whether you are building it consciously and deliberately, with clear intention and genuine emotional investment, or whether you are letting it be built by whatever random input and habitual thinking happens to occupy your mind. Take ownership of the construction. Sit down today and begin building the mental image of what you are moving toward. Make it specific. Make it sensory, make it emotionally real, make it yours, in the deepest and most honest sense of that word, and then return to it tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Not because you are waiting for the visualization to magically produce results while you sit still, but because a mind that has been shown the destination with genuine clarity and emotional conviction will find paths toward that destination that a mind without the vision never could. Your brain is the most sophisticated navigation system ever created, but it needs a destination entered before it can begin routing you there. Enter the destination today. See it clearly, feel it fully. Believe in it, not as a fantasy, but as a future that is being built right now, in the choices you are making and the mind you are consistently training. Because it is. Every single day that you show up for this practice is a day the future you have visualized comes 1 degree closer to the life you are actually living. Chapter 6. Speak words that rewire your mind for true greatness. Every word you speak is doing something to you. Not just to the people hearing it, to you. To the wiring inside your mind. To the chemistry inside your body. To the deep subconscious layers that are constantly listening, processing, and using whatever they receive as raw material for building your reality. Language is not merely a tool you use to communicate with the world around you. It is the tool your mind uses to understand itself. It is the medium through which your inner world is constructed. And yet most people have never spent a single deliberate moment thinking about the words they use most often, the sentences they repeat without thinking, the verbal patterns they have been running on autopilot since childhood. They talk constantly, sometimes silently inside their heads, sometimes aloud to others, sometimes in that invisible monologue that runs underneath everything they do. But they have never truly examined what that constant stream of language is building inside them. Words have physical weight, not metaphorical weight. Actual, measurable, physiological weight. When you speak a word that carries a strong emotional association, your brain activates the neural circuits connected to that association. Your body responds chemically. Certain words trigger the release of stress hormones. Other words trigger the release of chemicals associated with calm, pleasure, and expansion. This happens quickly, often faster than conscious thought can register. Your body is reacting to the words you use before your analytical mind has even finished processing them, which means that the language you use throughout your daily life is not just describing your experience. It is generating your experience. The words come first and the feelings follow, not always the other way around. Research in the field of psycholinguistics has demonstrated that the specific words a person uses to describe their emotional experience actually determine the intensity of that experience in their nervous system. People who have a richer, more varied emotional vocabulary, who can distinguish between feeling anxious and feeling apprehensive, between feeling sad and feeling disappointed, between feeling angry and feeling frustrated. Those people experience their emotions with more nuance and more manageability than people who only have access to coarse, broad descriptors. The specificity of the word changes the specificity of the experience, and the intensity of the word changes the intensity of the experience. If you consistently describe a minor inconvenience as a disaster, your nervous system generates a disaster response. If you describe a setback as a challenge you are working through, your nervous system generates a problem-solving response. The external situation is identical. The word you choose to place on it determines what your body and mind do with it. This means you have far more capacity to regulate your own emotional life through the deliberate use of language than most people ever realize or exercise. You do not have to be at the mercy of your feelings. You can choose the words that frame your feelings, and in doing so, you can change the quality and the intensity of those feelings while they are happening. This is not suppression. It is not pretending something is fine when it is not. It is using the actual mechanism by which your mind constructs emotional experience to participate consciously in that construction. It is using language the way a craftsman uses a tool, with precision and with purpose. The spoken word carries more neurological impact than the thought alone. This is something that many people find counterintuitive because we tend to think of speech as just a way of expressing what is already inside the mind. But the act of speaking activates different and additional neural circuits compared to the act of silent thinking. When you speak words aloud, your auditory cortex processes the sound of your own voice. Your motor cortex is engaged in the production of the sounds. Your emotional processing centers respond to the meaning and the emotional charge of what you are hearing yourself say. Multiple brain regions are working simultaneously in a way that creates a richer, more integrated neural experience than silent thought alone. This is why speaking your intentions, speaking your affirmations, speaking your values and your commitments aloud has a more powerful effect on your subconscious mind than simply thinking them. The brain processes what it hears differently, and often more deeply, than what it merely thinks. Your own voice has a particular quality of authority over your subconscious mind. There are voices that your brain has learned to trust, to be influenced by, to internalize. The voice of a parent from early childhood, the voice of a teacher who shaped how you saw yourself, the voice of a person whose opinion you hold in high regard. But no voice has more hours of accumulated influence over your subconscious than your own. You have been listening to yourself your entire life. Your mind has been processing and internalizing your own words continuously since you learned to form them. Which means that the words you speak to yourself and about yourself carry a weight of influence that is genuinely extraordinary. And the content of those words, whether they are words that expand or contract, that build or erode, that open possibilities or close them, is being registered at a depth that should make you take every sentence you utter about yourself with extraordinary seriousness. Begin by paying attention to the casual statements you make about yourself in everyday conversation. Not the formal affirmations you might say intentionally during a practice. The offhand remarks, the throwaway comments, the self-deprecating jokes you use to seem humble or relatable. When you casually say in conversation that you are terrible with names, or that you are the world's worst cook, or that you have always been bad at math, or that you are not really a creative person, you are doing something that feels innocent but is not. You are speaking your self-concept into existence in front of witnesses, and your own mind is one of those witnesses. Every time you say something about yourself with casual certainty, your subconscious mind receives it as a statement of fact and files it accordingly. The casualness does not make it harmless. It often makes it more powerful because it bypasses the critical evaluation that you might apply to a more formal statement. Start noticing these casual statements with genuine curiosity, not with judgment, not with the intention of criticizing yourself for having made them. Simply notice them. When you hear yourself making a casual negative statement about your own ability, nature, or worth, pause internally and ask yourself whether you actually want to keep sending that message to your deepest self. In most cases, you will find the answer is no. And that simple moment of awareness, that pause between the habitual statement and the automatic acceptance of it, creates the space to choose differently. You do not have to make a big production of it. You do not have to correct yourself loudly or announce a new belief to the room. Simply notice, and when you can, choose a different word. The quality of the words you use in moments of difficulty is particularly revealing and particularly important. When something goes wrong, most people reach immediately for language that globalizes and catastrophizes. They say things like, everything always goes wrong for them, or that they knew this would happen, or that nothing ever works out the way it is supposed to, or that they are just unlucky. These statements do several things simultaneously, all of them damaging. They take a specific, isolated event and treat it as evidence of a universal pattern. They reinforce a narrative of helplessness and inevitability. And they speak a story of limitation into the subconscious mind with the emotional intensity that comes with moments of genuine frustration or pain, which means those words land with particular force in the deeper layers of the mind where real programming happens. The alternative is not to respond to difficulty with artificial positivity. It is to respond with language that is accurate without being catastrophizing. Language that acknowledges the difficulty without turning it into a life sentence. Instead of saying that everything always goes wrong, you can say that this particular thing did not go the way you wanted, and you are figuring out what to do next. Instead of saying you knew this would happen, you can say you did not anticipate this outcome and you are learning from it. The external situation has not changed, but the language you have used to frame it has fundamentally changed how your mind will process it, respond to it, and carry it forward. Accurate language that leaves the door open to growth is not a softening of reality. It is a refusal to let a difficult moment define an entire life story. Now it is time to talk about intentional verbal practice and why it works so much more powerfully than most people expect when it is done correctly. Spoken affirmations have a reputation in some circles for being ineffective, even somewhat silly, and that reputation has been earned by the way affirmations are usually practiced. Most people recite affirmations the way they might read items off a grocery list, quickly, flatly, going through the motions without any real engagement of feeling, conviction, or genuine belief. And then they wonder why nothing changes. The words, without the feeling behind them, are like an envelope without a letter inside. They travel, but they deliver nothing. The subconscious mind does not respond to words alone. It responds to words plus emotion plus conviction plus consistent repetition. All four ingredients are necessary. Remove any one of them, and the effectiveness drops sharply. Craft your verbal statements with precision. Every word matters. Begin with statements that your mind can genuinely accept, even if they feel like a stretch. There is a spectrum between where you currently are and where you want to be, and your most effective verbal practice lives at the edge of that spectrum, not so far into the future that your mind rejects the statement as obviously false, but far enough beyond your current default that the statement is pulling you genuinely forward. If you currently struggle with financial confidence, a statement that claims you are already a millionaire may produce so much internal resistance that it actually reinforces disbelief. But a statement like your financial intelligence and capability are growing consistently every day is something your mind can accept as both true and directional. It creates forward movement without triggering the internal alarm that shuts down the process. Use present tense for your verbal statements, not future tense. The difference is not cosmetic. When you say you will be confident, you are placing the confident version of yourself permanently in the future, always ahead of you, never here. When you say you are becoming more confident every day, you are placing yourself on a current trajectory that your mind can engage with right now. When you say your mind is clear and your focus is sharp, you are stating a present reality that your subconscious mind will begin to verify and support. The present tense creates immediacy. It tells your subconscious mind that the work is happening now, that the identity is forming now, that the change is in progress right now. And the subconscious mind responds to what is current far more readily than to what is merely eventual. Speak your statements with physical engagement. Stand when you say them if you can, or sit upright with your full spine engaged. Take a breath before you begin. Say them with the pace and the tone and the volume of someone who genuinely means what they are saying. Not shouting, not performing, but speaking with the quiet, steady conviction of someone who is stating something they know to be true. The physical engagement matters because it signals to your nervous system that this is important. Slouched, mumbled affirmations carry the physical signature of someone who does not believe what they are saying, and your subconscious mind reads that physical signature and responds accordingly. Every aspect of how you deliver the words tells your deeper mind how much weight to assign to them. The words you speak to other people are also shaping you, and this is a dimension of verbal practice that deserves serious attention. The stories you tell about your life in conversation with others are some of the most powerful programming inputs your subconscious mind receives. Because when you tell a story to another person, you are experiencing it again, with all the emotional weight that storytelling carries, and you are giving that story the additional reinforcement of social expression, of speaking it into the world in a way that feels real and witnessed and confirmed. If the stories you consistently tell about your life are stories of limitation, victimhood, bad luck, and recurring failure, you are reinforcing those as the defining narrative of your existence every time you tell them, and your subconscious mind is taking notes. This does not mean you should pretend your life has been perfect, or that you should avoid sharing your genuine struggles with people who care about you. Authentic human connection requires honesty about difficulty. But there is a profound difference between sharing a challenge while maintaining agency and sharing a challenge in a way that cements your identity as someone to whom bad things happen. The first version of storytelling strengthens you. The second version erodes you. Pay attention to how you close your stories. Do they end with what you are learning, with what you are doing differently, with where you are headed? Or do they end with confirmation that life is hard and things are not likely to improve? The ending of the story is where the message lands deepest, in your mind and in the minds of everyone listening. There is a category of words that does particular damage, and it shows up in the vocabulary of almost everyone who has not deliberately examined their language patterns. These are what might be called absolute words. Words like never, always, impossible, can't, won't, and every variation of permanent limitation. When these words are attached to statements about yourself and your capabilities, they close doors that should remain open. They tell your subconscious mind that certain territories of possibility are permanently off limits. And a mind that believes a territory is permanently off limits will not even scan that territory for opportunities. It has been told not to look there. So it does not. And the person then experiences a reality in which those opportunities genuinely seem not to exist, not because they do not exist, but because the mind has been told not to see them. Begin removing absolute language from your self-referential speech. When you notice yourself saying you can never do something, replace the word never with the phrase not yet. When you notice yourself saying something is impossible for you, replace it with the acknowledgement that you have not yet found the approach that works. These are not just semantic games. They are genuine shifts in the instruction set you are giving your brain. The word yet is one of the most powerful single words in the language of growth. It signals to your subconscious mind that the door is not closed, that the capability might not be present now, but that it is accessible through continued effort. Research in the psychology of learning has found that students who are taught to add the word yet to their statements of current inability show significantly greater persistence and significantly better learning outcomes than those who are not. The word is a signal, and your subconscious mind responds to it. The conversations you choose to spend your time in are also programming you. Language is contagious. When you spend significant time in conversations characterized by complaint, cynicism, gossip, and limitation, that vocabulary and those thought patterns begin to influence your own internal language patterns over time. This is not a moral judgment about the people in those conversations. It is simply an observation about how the mind works. You absorb the linguistic patterns of the environment you are consistently in. If the dominant language of your daily social environment is small, fearful, or closed, you will have to work significantly harder to maintain the expansive, growth-oriented language patterns you are building. If the dominant language of your environment is possibility-oriented, accountable, and forward-focused, those patterns reinforce what you are deliberately practicing. This is one of the many reasons that the people you choose to spend your time with matters so profoundly to your personal development, not just emotionally, linguistically. They are contributing to your daily vocabulary, and your daily vocabulary is contributing to your daily reality. Questions are a profoundly underutilized form of verbal programming. Your mind has a built-in mechanism for answering questions. When a question is posed, the brain immediately and automatically begins generating answers, even when you are not consciously aware of it. This is why the questions you habitually ask yourself are so important. Habitual questions that begin with, "Why am I so bad at this?" or "Why does this always happen to me?" or "Why can't I ever get this right?" will be answered by your mind. The answers will arrive as evidence of your inadequacy. Your brain will find memories, patterns, and interpretations that answer those questions honestly and thoroughly. But ask different questions, and the brain will find different answers. Ask yourself what strengths you already have that are relevant to this challenge. Ask yourself what you have learned from the difficult experiences you have been through. Ask yourself What would be possible if you genuinely committed to this for the next 6 months? Ask yourself what the wisest, most capable version of you would do right now. These are not rhetorical questions. They are genuine search queries directed at the most sophisticated information processing system ever known. And your brain will work on them. It will surface answers. It will make connections. It will generate ideas and insights and shifts in perspective that would never have been accessible to the mind asking the small, limiting questions it had been asking before. The quality of your questions determines the quality of the insights and solutions available to you. And the questions you ask most consistently become the lens through which you interpret your entire experience. Gratitude expressed in words carries a specific and powerful effect on the subconscious mind that goes beyond the general sense of well-being that most people associate with it. When you speak gratitude specifically, when you say in clear and particular language what you are grateful for and why, you are training your mind to notice and value what is working in your life. You are instructing your perception to find abundance rather than scarcity. And because what you consistently find more evidence of becomes what your baseline reality feels like, the deliberate spoken practice of specific gratitude is a direct method for reshaping your experience of your own life. Not by changing what is there, by changing what your mind is trained to see and value when it looks at what is there. Spend a portion of your verbal practice each day naming specifically what you are grateful for, not in vague general terms, in precise, personal, emotionally connected language. Not just saying you are grateful for your health, but saying specifically what your health allows you to do today, what it feels like to have that capacity, and how different your life would be without it. The specificity generates the emotion, and the emotion is what makes the practice genuinely transformative rather than merely habitual. You are not reciting gratitude. You are experiencing it through the vehicle of specific and intentional language. There is a form of verbal practice that most people overlook entirely, and it may be one of the most powerful available. It is the practice of speaking your vision and your intentions aloud to yourself, in full voice, as if you are declaring something rather than wishing for it. Not reading from a list, not mumbling through a routine, but standing up, taking up space, breathing fully, and speaking the truth of who you are becoming into the room around you. This practice feels uncomfortable for many people at first. There is a vulnerability to it, a sense of exposure, even when you are completely alone. And that discomfort is worth examining because it often reveals a deep-seated fear of claiming who you actually want to be. A fear that claiming it makes it more painful if it does not arrive. A fear that wanting something that fully might mean losing something that feels safe. Lean into the discomfort. The willingness to declare your vision aloud, to give it the dignity of your full voice, is itself a form of commitment that registers deeply in the subconscious mind. Words spoken with genuine conviction about who you are becoming, what you are capable of, and where you are headed, are not just sounds. They are instructions. They are commitments. They are acts of creation. Every civilization in human history has understood that there is something extraordinary about the spoken word. Every tradition of wisdom on earth has recognized that language is not merely descriptive, but generative. That speaking something changes the relationship between the speaker and that thing. When you speak your becoming with clarity and conviction, you are not describing a fantasy. You are participating in the actual construction of a future self. The words you use today are building the mind you will have tomorrow. They are shaping the beliefs that will drive the decisions that will produce the results that will define your life. This is not a poetic way of saying something vague. This is the actual mechanism by which human lives are shaped. Language is not just a reflection of consciousness. It is a primary instrument of its construction. You were given a vocabulary before you were given the wisdom to choose it carefully. Now you have both. Now you can look at the words you have been using unconsciously and decide with full awareness which ones deserve to stay and which ones need to be replaced. Choose your words the way a craftsman chooses their tools, with care, with knowledge of what each one does, with an understanding that the right word in the right moment can change the trajectory of a thought, a conversation, a decision, a life. Begin speaking to yourself and about yourself in the language of the person you are becoming, not the person you were told you were, not the person your fears have been insisting you are, the person you know, in the deepest and most honest part of yourself, that you have always been capable of becoming. Speak that person into existence, one deliberate, powerful, truthful word at a time, because that is exactly how they will arrive. Chapter 7. Eliminate fear and replace it with limitless mental strength. Fear is the most expensive thing most people will ever carry. Not expensive in money, expensive in life. In years spent not doing the things that mattered. In conversations never had. In opportunities walked past. In mornings woken up to, with a knot in the stomach, instead of a sense of genuine purpose. In versions of the self never fully inhabited, because the fear of what might happen if you tried felt more real than the certainty of what would be lost if you did not. The cost of fear is measured in the distance between the life you are living and the life you know you are capable of living. And for most people, that distance is significant. Not because they lack talent, not because the world was particularly unkind to them, but because fear, operating quietly and consistently in the background of every decision they made, kept redirecting them toward safety and away from the growth that was waiting just beyond the edge of their comfort. Understanding fear at the level that allows you to genuinely transform your relationship with it requires going deeper than the surface experience of it. Fear is not the enemy. This statement might surprise you. Fear is a biological survival mechanism that has been operating in human beings for hundreds of thousands of years. It evolved not to make your life small, but to keep you alive. In the environment where human beings first developed this mechanism, the threats were immediate and physical. A predator, a rival, a fall from height, a shortage of food. In those contexts, the fear response, the rapid surge of adrenaline, the heightened sensory awareness, the immediate redirection of blood flow to the muscles needed for fight or flight, was genuinely life-saving. It was one of the primary reasons the human species survived long enough to become what it is today. The problem is that this ancient mechanism has not received the update it needs for the modern world. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between the kind of threat that warrants a full physiological emergency response and the kind of threat that is entirely psychological. It cannot tell the difference between the fear of a physical predator and the fear of public embarrassment, between the fear of starvation and the fear of rejection, between the fear of a physical fall and the fear of failure. To your nervous system, a threat is a threat, and it responds to all of them with the same biological urgency. Which means that when you stand up to speak in front of a group of people, or when you consider launching a new venture, or when you contemplate telling someone how you genuinely feel, your body can produce the exact same physiological response as it would produce if you were facing a genuinely life-threatening situation. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, your mind narrows, and your thinking becomes less creative, less nuanced, less capable of seeing the full picture. And then you interpret that physiological state as evidence that the situation is genuinely dangerous, which makes the fear feel even more justified, which intensifies the response, which makes the situation feel even more dangerous. It is a loop, and most people spend their entire lives caught inside it, without ever understanding the mechanism they are dealing with. Breaking out of that loop begins with knowledge. When you understand that the fear response is a biological mechanism rather than an accurate signal about the objective danger level of a situation, something shifts. You stop treating the feeling of fear as a verdict. You stop interpreting the racing heart and the tightness in the chest as proof that you should not proceed. Instead, you can begin to treat those physical signals as information, useful information about the level of meaning and importance this moment carries for you, without treating them as a stop sign. The presence of fear means something matters to you. It means you are at the edge of something significant. It means your nervous system has identified this as territory worth taking seriously. None of that means you should turn around. The distinction between productive fear and protective fear is worth understanding deeply. Productive fear is the kind that arises at the edges of genuine growth. It shows up when you are about to do something that has the potential to change your life in meaningful ways. It shows up before hard conversations that need to happen, before commitments that require real investment, before the kind of action that, if taken consistently, will genuinely alter the trajectory of your life. Protective fear is the kind that arises in response to genuine physical or ethical danger, the kind that is telling you something real about the actual safety of a situation. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills of personal development. Ask yourself honestly whether this situation poses a genuine threat to your physical safety or your ethical integrity. If the honest answer is no, if the fear is about social judgment, about the possibility of failure, about the discomfort of something new and unfamiliar, then you are dealing with productive fear. And productive fear is something to be walked through, not avoided. Mental strength is not the absence of fear. This cannot be stated clearly enough, because the misconception that strong people do not feel afraid is one of the most damaging myths in the culture of personal development. Every genuinely strong person who has ever done something significant felt fear in the process. Every entrepreneur who built something real felt it. Every person who walked away from something comfortable but wrong felt it. Every individual who stood up for something that mattered in a room full of people who disagreed felt it. The strength was not in the absence of the feeling. The strength was in the decision to act despite the feeling. To let the fear exist without giving it authority over the outcome. That is the quality you are building, not fearlessness. Courage. And courage, by definition, requires that fear is present. You cannot be courageous about something that does not scare you. The pathway to building that courage, to developing what can genuinely be called limitless mental strength, begins with a practice that feels so simple that many people underestimate it completely. It is the practice of doing one small, uncomfortable thing every single day. Not one massive act of heroism once a month. One small, deliberate, consistent step into discomfort every day. The size of the step matters far less than the consistency of the practice. Because what you are building through this practice is not just tolerance for specific uncomfortable situations. You are building an identity as someone who moves through discomfort. You are training your nervous system to associate the feeling of discomfort with the experience of moving forward, rather than with the experience of danger. You are creating a body of evidence, accumulated day by day, that the things you were afraid of did not destroy you. That you moved through them and survived. That you sometimes even found they were less terrible than the fear had promised they would be. Start with something genuinely small. If social situations produce anxiety, make brief eye contact and smile at one stranger tomorrow. If speaking up in groups feels threatening, make one comment in one meeting this week. Even a small one, even if your voice shakes slightly when you do it. If beginning a new project produces a fear of failure so intense that you have been circling the starting line for months, spend 15 minutes on it today. Just 15 minutes. Not with the goal of completing it, just with the goal of having started. The momentum built by small, consistent actions toward what you fear is one of the most powerful forces available to a person who is serious about building mental strength. Each small act of courage sends a message to your subconscious mind. It says that you are someone who acts despite feeling afraid, and over time, your subconscious mind begins to treat that as a fundamental truth about who you are. There is a cognitive pattern that makes fear far more debilitating than it needs to be, and it operates in most people completely beneath the level of conscious awareness. Psychologists refer to it as catastrophic thinking. It is the mental habit of taking a feared outcome and automatically projecting it to the absolute worst possible conclusion without any evaluation of how likely that conclusion actually is. When you think about having a difficult conversation, your mind does not just worry about the conversation going awkwardly. It projects forward to the relationship being permanently destroyed, to your reputation being ruined, to a cascade of consequences that ends with you utterly alone and professionally finished. When you think about starting a business, your mind does not just worry about the business struggling initially. It skips directly to complete financial ruin, to public humiliation, to the total collapse of everything you have worked to build. These projections feel real. They feel like logical assessments of probable outcomes, but they are not. They are the fear response generating worst-case scenarios and presenting them as likely realities. The antidote to catastrophic thinking is not to force yourself to think positively about the feared outcome. It is to think accurately. When a catastrophic projection arrives in your mind, pause and apply 3 specific questions to it. First, ask yourself what the realistic worst-case outcome actually is. Not the catastrophic fantasy your fear has generated, but the realistic worst case. Usually when you strip away the emotional amplification, the actual worst case is significantly more manageable than the fear made it appear. Second, ask yourself what the realistic best case is. Not the fantasy of everything going perfectly, but the genuine best case that has a real probability of occurring. Third, ask yourself what the most likely actual outcome is, somewhere between the worst and best case. When you hold all 3 of these scenarios in your mind simultaneously, the feared situation becomes 3-dimensional rather than 1-dimensional. You can plan for the worst, work toward the best, and recognize that the most likely outcome is probably something you can handle. The catastrophic illusion dissolves in the light of accurate thinking. Physical state is one of the most overlooked dimensions of managing fear in real time. When fear arrives in the body as a physiological response, most people try to manage it purely at the mental level. They try to think their way through it, while their body is in full biological emergency mode. But the mental and physical systems are not separate. They are in constant bidirectional communication. And sometimes the most effective entry point for changing the mental state of fear is through the body. Slow, deliberate, diaphragmatic breathing is one of the most immediate and reliable methods for shifting the nervous system from a threat response toward a state of calm readiness. When you breathe slowly and deeply, specifically with a longer exhale than inhale, you are directly activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch of the autonomic nervous system responsible for calming the body after a stress response. Your heart rate begins to slow, the constriction in your chest begins to ease. The narrowing of your thinking begins to reverse. The fear does not necessarily disappear, but its grip on your physiology loosens enough for you to make choices rather than simply react. Practice this breathing deliberately when you are not in a fear response, so that it becomes an automatic resource when you are. The time to learn how to swim is not when you are already drowning. Practice the slow breath cycles daily, even when nothing is frightening you, until the action of taking a full, slow breath becomes neurologically linked with a shift toward calm. Then, when fear arrives, the breath is a practiced skill rather than an idea you are trying to remember under pressure. This distinction matters enormously. Skills built in calm are available in chaos. Concepts learned in calm often evaporate the moment the fear response engages. The relationship you have with uncertainty is at the core of your relationship with fear. Almost all fear is ultimately about uncertainty. The fear of failure is really the fear of not knowing whether you will succeed. The fear of rejection is really the fear of not knowing how someone will respond. The fear of the future is really the discomfort of not knowing what is coming. People who have developed genuine mental strength have not eliminated uncertainty from their lives. They have fundamentally changed their relationship with it. They have moved from treating uncertainty as a threat to treating it as a natural and even necessary feature of any life being lived with genuine ambition and genuine engagement. They have learned to become comfortable not knowing the outcome in advance, to move forward anyway, to take the next step without the guarantee of a safe landing. Building comfort with uncertainty is itself a practice. One powerful approach is to regularly and deliberately do things whose outcome you genuinely cannot predict. Take a route you have never taken before. Start a conversation with someone you have no script for. Attempt something new where success is not guaranteed. Not because the outcome of these small experiments matters greatly, but because each one is training your nervous system in the experience of moving into the unknown and discovering that you can navigate whatever you find there. You are building what might be called uncertainty tolerance. And as that tolerance grows, the range of action available to you expands dramatically because fear of the unknown no longer functions as an effective barrier. The stories you tell yourself about what fear means are shaping your ability to move through it more than the fear itself. Most people have a story that says fear means stop, that the presence of fear is a signal that they are not ready, not capable, not supposed to be doing this thing. That story is worth examining very carefully. Because when you look at the lives of people who have built genuine strength and done genuinely meaningful things, what you find is that they operated under a completely different story about what fear means. Their story was that fear means go, that the presence of fear is a signal that something worth doing is in the vicinity, that the feeling of fear, rather than being a stop sign, is a compass pointing toward the territory of their greatest growth. Adopting this reframe is not about being reckless. It is about refusing to let a biological mechanism designed for survival in a prehistoric environment be the final authority on what you are allowed to attempt in your one extraordinary life. Anger is a resource that is underutilized in the process of overcoming fear, and it is worth understanding how to access it constructively. There is a quality of healthy, directed anger that is the opposite of fear in terms of its physiological effects. Where fear contracts, anger expands. Where fear narrows focus, anger sharpens it. Where fear produces a desire to retreat, anger produces a desire to move forward. When you have been living smaller than your potential, because fear has been the dominant force in your decision-making, there is a legitimate place for genuine, directed anger about that. Not anger at yourself, not the self-destructive kind of anger that turns inward and becomes shame, but a clean, honest anger at the smallness that fear has imposed on your life. An anger that says, enough. That this stops now, that the life you are capable of living is not going to be sacrificed on the altar of a biological mechanism that was designed for a world that no longer exists in the form that created it. That kind of anger, held briefly and directed purposefully, can be the fuel that breaks through a wall that gentler motivation could not move. Use it when you need it, not as a permanent state, but as a spark, as the ignition for a moment of action that fear had been preventing. And then let the action itself take over. Because once you begin moving through the fear, once the first step has been taken, a very different force than anger takes over. It is the force of genuine momentum. And momentum, once generated, is the most reliable antidote to fear that exists. A body in motion, through the thing it feared, is no longer spending its energy on the fear. It is spending its energy on the movement. And the movement is where the life is. Accountability structures accelerate the process of overcoming fear in ways that solitary commitment often cannot match. When you make a commitment to do a fear-confronting action to another person who matters to you, you are adding a social dimension to the commitment that your nervous system takes very seriously. The discomfort of potentially having to tell someone you did not do what you said you would do can sometimes be a stronger motivator than the desire to grow. Use this mechanism deliberately. Find a person whose opinion of you matters and tell them specifically what you are going to do and by when. Not in vague terms, in specific, measurable, time-bound terms. This is not about external pressure for its own sake. It is about using a powerful aspect of human social psychology to support the actions that the fearful part of you might otherwise find a way to avoid. Service is one of the most powerful antidotes to fear that has ever been identified, and it is almost never discussed in the context of personal mental strength. When your attention is focused inward on your own fear, your own discomfort, your own possibility of failure or rejection, the fear feels enormous because it is the only thing in the field of view. But when your attention is genuinely directed toward the impact you want to have on someone else, toward the person you want to help, the difference you want to make, the value you want to add to someone's life or work, the fear shrinks. Not because it has been addressed, but because it is no longer the center of attention. Purpose, genuine and specific purpose beyond yourself, is one of the most reliable reorientations away from fear that exists. Ask yourself who you are doing this for. Not just yourself. Who else benefits from you moving through this fear and taking this action? Let their face come into your mind clearly. Let the impact on them feel real. And then move toward that impact. The fear will still be present, but it will have competition for your attention, and purpose almost always wins. Redefining what failure means is essential to eliminating the kind of fear that stops people from ever beginning. The conventional understanding of failure is binary. Either you succeed or you fail. Either you achieve the desired outcome or you have failed at the attempt. This definition makes failure something to be avoided at almost any cost, because the cost of experiencing it, the social cost, the psychological cost, the cost to the story you tell about yourself, seems enormous. But if you redefine failure as any attempt that did not produce the desired outcome while teaching you something of value, the entire emotional valence of the word shifts. Under this definition, every unsuccessful attempt is simultaneously a step forward in knowledge, skill, and self-understanding. Under this definition, the only true failure is the refusal to attempt. The only genuine failure is the life lived in avoidance of the experiences that would have grown you. This redefinition is not just a comforting reframe, it is actually more accurate than the conventional definition. Every person who has achieved anything meaningful has a long and specific history of attempts that did not produce the desired outcome. The difference between them and the people who gave up is not that they experienced less failure, it is that they extracted the lesson from each experience and used it as raw material for the next attempt. Failure, understood properly, is the most efficient teacher available. It gives you specific, personalized, directly relevant information about exactly what adjustment is needed to move closer to the outcome you are pursuing. The person who treats failure as data is always one step closer to success than the person who treats failure as a verdict. Mental strength is not built in moments of ease. This truth is worth sitting with because it changes how you understand the difficult experiences life brings. Every time you face something frightening and move through it, every time you sit with discomfort long enough to see it does not define you, every time you choose the harder right thing over the easier familiar thing, you are building a quality of inner strength that cannot be given, cannot be borrowed, and cannot be taken away. It is forged through the actual experience of doing hard things and surviving them. And the extraordinary thing about this forging process is that each experience of genuine difficulty that you move through successfully not only builds strength for the future, it also retroactively redefines your past. It changes the story you carry about what you are capable of. It adds to the internal evidence that you are someone who can handle whatever comes. There is a quality that sits at the core of genuine mental strength, and it is different from toughness, which is often confused with it. Toughness implies resistance. It implies a hardening of the self against whatever arrives. But the deepest kind of mental strength is not about hardening. It is about flexibility, about the capacity to be fully exposed to the difficulty of a moment, to let it land without being destroyed by it, and to find within the difficulty something useful, something worth carrying forward. The strongest people in human history were not people who felt nothing. They were people who felt everything and found a way to keep going anyway, who found a way to use the pain of their experience as material for something meaningful. That is not toughness. That is something more profound. That is the kind of strength that is genuinely limitless, because it does not depend on circumstances being favorable. It draws on the circumstances, whatever they are, as fuel. Begin treating every fearful situation in your life right now, not as an obstacle to the life you want, but as a part of the construction of the person who will be capable of living that life. The fear you feel when you consider having the difficult conversation is the material your courage is made from. The discomfort you feel when you sit down to do the challenging work is the friction that sharpens your discipline. The vulnerability you feel when you share something genuine about yourself is the experience that deepens your connections with other human beings. Every dimension of fear, when approached with the understanding that moving through it, rather than away from it, is where the growth lives, becomes not a barrier, but a doorway. Walk through the doors, not all at once, not with reckless abandon, but consistently, deliberately, with the full knowledge that every step through a door, marked with fear, is a step into a larger version of your own life. The life that your strongest self, the one being built through this entire journey, has always been waiting to inhabit. The strength you are building has no ceiling, because you have decided that the fear no longer gets to set one. Chapter 8. Train your subconscious mind to attract what you deserve. There is a quiet conversation happening inside you every single moment of every single day. Not the loud, obvious conversation of your conscious thoughts and deliberate decisions. A deeper conversation, one that happens below the surface of what you are aware of. One that is being conducted in the language of feeling, expectation, and belief. And this conversation, this continuous internal broadcast, is acting like a signal. It is going out into every interaction you have, every opportunity that comes near you, every relationship that forms or fades, every experience that enters your life or passes you by. The people and circumstances and outcomes that show up consistently in your life are not random. They are a response to what that inner signal has been broadcasting. And the most important question you can ask yourself right now is this: what has my inner signal been saying? The concept of attracting what you deserve is not about magical thinking. It is not about sitting still and waiting for the universe to deliver gifts to your door. It is about something far more precise, far more grounded in the actual mechanics of human psychology and human behavior. It is about the alignment between what your subconscious mind genuinely believes you are worthy of and what you are therefore able to perceive, pursue, and receive when it shows up in front of you. Because here is what most people never fully grasp. The thing standing between you and everything you want is not always the absence of opportunity. Very often, it is the presence of an internal filter built from years of accumulated beliefs about your own worthiness that is quietly deciding what gets through and what gets turned away before your conscious mind even has a chance to engage. Worthiness is the hidden variable in almost every conversation about success and attraction that nobody is willing to address directly. Talent without a sense of worthiness produces people who sabotage their own achievements. Intelligence without a sense of worthiness produces people who talk themselves out of opportunities the moment they arise. Hard work without a sense of worthiness produces people who work tremendously hard, but somehow always end up back where they started, giving away what they earned, walking away from what they built, quietly ensuring that the ceiling they believe they deserve stays firmly in place. The subconscious mind is not trying to keep you small, it is trying to keep you consistent. Consistent with the internal image it holds of what is appropriate for someone like you. And if that image says you are someone who struggles, someone who receives less than others, someone who gets close to good things but never quite arrives, your subconscious mind will find 1,000 subtle ways to make that image your reality, even when the external circumstances are finally working in your favor. Examine honestly what you believe you deserve, not what you think you should believe. Not what sounds reasonable when you say it out loud to someone else. What you actually, deeply, in the most private corner of your inner world, feel entitled to experience. Because the gap between what you consciously want and what you subconsciously believe you deserve is where every form of self-sabotage originates. Where every inexplicable hesitation before a good thing comes from. Where every pattern of losing what you gain, of pushing away what you have drawn close, of finding fault with what should feel like a win, is rooted. The subconscious mind is extraordinarily faithful to its own image of you. It will protect that image, even when protecting it means blocking your own progress. The training required to shift this is specific, and it begins with an honest inventory of your receiving patterns. Not your earning patterns, your receiving patterns. Because earning and receiving are not the same thing. Many people are tremendous earners, but terrible receivers. They work hard, they produce, they contribute, they generate, and then they find ways not to keep what they have created. They give it away too freely. They make decisions that erode what they have built. They feel uncomfortable with abundance and unconsciously create circumstances that return them to the familiar territory of lack. This is not carelessness. This is the subconscious mind executing its program with perfect precision. The program says, this level of good is not appropriate for you. And so the excess gets released, one way or another, until the level returns to what feels familiar. Begin noticing your relationship with receiving in its smallest expressions throughout your daily life. When someone gives you a genuine compliment, what is your immediate internal response? Do you receive it fully, allow it to land, say a genuine thank you, and let yourself feel the warmth of being appreciated? Or do you deflect it immediately, minimize the thing being complimented, redirect attention away from yourself as quickly as possible? When something good happens unexpectedly, a piece of luck, a kind gesture, an opportunity you did not have to earn in an obvious way, do you feel genuine pleasure and gratitude? Or do you immediately begin wondering what the catch is, when the other shoe will drop, why this cannot possibly be as good as it appears? These responses are not personality quirks. They are diagnostic information about the state of your subconscious receiving filter. They tell you exactly how much good you are currently programmed to allow in versus how much you are trained to deflect or diminish. The practice of expanding your receiving capacity begins with something so simple it might seem almost too easy. It is the practice of receiving small things well, completely, without deflection, without minimization, without the instinctive movement away from the good thing that is arriving. The next time someone compliments your work, pause before you respond. Take a breath. Feel the compliment. Let it actually register, and then say a genuine, unqualified thank you. Not followed by a list of everything that could have been better. Just thank you. This is harder than it sounds for people who have spent years deflecting kindness because somewhere inside they felt they did not quite deserve the full version of it. But each time you practice receiving something well, no matter how small, you are expanding the channel through which good things can flow into your life. You are signaling to your subconscious mind that abundance, appreciation, and good things are appropriate for someone like you, and the subconscious mind updates its program accordingly. There is a psychological principle at work in the attraction of desired outcomes that goes by several names in different fields, but operates according to the same fundamental mechanism. Your dominant expectation shapes your perception of what is available. When you genuinely and deeply expect good things to happen for you, not with naive wishfulness, but with the steady, grounded confidence of someone who has seen consistent evidence of their own ability to create good outcomes, your brain's perceptual systems orient toward finding confirmation of that expectation. You begin to see possibilities in situations that a mind operating from negative expectation would read as obstacles. You begin to notice aligned connections in conversations that a mind focused on scarcity would overlook entirely. You begin to recognize opportunities at the moment they are available, rather than understanding what they were only in retrospect, after they have passed. This is not the same as saying that expectation alone creates outcomes. It does not. Action is always required. But expectation determines the quality and consistency of the action you take and the perception that guides it. A person who expects failure will take hesitant, half-committed action that produces evidence of failure, which confirms the expectation, which produces more hesitant action in an ongoing cycle. A person who expects success will take bold, fully committed action that produces more reliable results, which confirms the expectation, which produces better action still. Same external world, completely different internal signal, completely different outcomes over time. Cultivating genuine positive expectation at the subconscious level requires that you build what might be called an evidence architecture. Most people's relationship with expectation is reactive. They expect what their past experience tells them to expect. If their past has been characterized by struggle, they expect struggle. If relationships have consistently disappointed them, they expect disappointment. If financial instability has been a recurring pattern, they expect instability. The past is being used as the primary data set for predicting the future, and because the subconscious mind then acts in accordance with those predictions, which produces outcomes that confirm those predictions, the past keeps recreating itself as the future. Breaking this cycle requires that you deliberately and systematically build a new data set, one that is not sourced entirely from the past, but that draws on a carefully assembled collection of evidence that things can and do go well. This means beginning to catalogue, with genuine specificity, the times in your life when things worked out, when you were supported by circumstances or by people, when you took a risk and it paid off, when something you wanted arrived in ways you did not fully expect, when an apparently difficult situation turned out to contain exactly the lesson or the connection or the opportunity that moved your life forward. These moments exist in every life, including yours. But because the mind naturally lends more weight to negative experiences than positive ones, a cognitive bias with its own evolutionary history, the positive experiences often do not carry their fair weight in shaping your baseline expectation. Correct this imbalance deliberately. Create a physical record of your evidence of things going well. Write it down. Specifically, not vaguely. Not just that things worked out, but exactly how, exactly what happened, exactly what it felt like when the good thing arrived. Read this record regularly. Add to it consistently. Make it a living document that grows over time. Because as it grows, so does the subconscious database that your mind draws on when it is deciding what to expect. You are curating the input, and the input you consistently feed your deepest levels of processing is what those levels will use to predict and prepare for your future. Generosity operates as one of the most powerful and least understood forms of subconscious training for attraction. There is a relationship between how freely you give and how readily you are able to receive that most people have not consciously examined. People who give from a place of genuine abundance, not from a desire to impress or to create obligation, but from a real internal experience of having enough to share, are consistently sending a signal to their subconscious minds that abundance is their natural state, that there is always enough, that giving does not diminish them because the source from which they give is not finite. This signal, repeated regularly through the consistent practice of genuine generosity, begins to reshape the subconscious expectation of abundance. And a subconscious mind that expects abundance begins to perceive and create the conditions of abundance far more effectively than one that operates from the chronic expectation of scarcity. The reverse is also true. People who give resentfully, or who are unable to give without immediately calculating the return, or who experience genuine anxiety when resources flow out because some part of them believes that what goes out cannot come back, are continuously reinforcing a subconscious program of lack, not because the universe is keeping score, but because their own minds are, because the feeling of scarcity that accompanies guarded giving is itself the signal that shapes expectation and therefore shapes behavior, and therefore shapes outcomes. Your subconscious mind does not respond to your intentions as much as it responds to your felt experience. And if the felt experience of giving is anxiety, that anxiety is the message being recorded and acted upon. Begin practicing generosity in small, genuine ways, without any expectation of a specific return. Not as a technique for manipulating outcomes, but as a genuine training of your internal state toward abundance. Give your full attention in a conversation when the easiest thing would be to be distracted. Give your honest encouragement to someone pursuing something difficult when competition makes that cost something. Give your time to something that matters without watching the clock. Give a word of genuine appreciation to someone who was not expecting it. Each of these small acts of giving, when they come from a place of genuine willingness rather than obligation or calculation, is training your subconscious in the felt experience of abundance. And that training accumulates. It shifts the baseline from which your deeper mind is operating. And a mind operating from genuine abundance creates very different life circumstances than a mind operating from scarcity. The standards you hold for yourself are a direct communication to your subconscious mind about what you believe you deserve. People frequently misunderstand standards as being primarily about how you perform for others. But the most significant function of personal standards is what they tell your own subconscious mind about your value. When you consistently allow your own standards to be violated, when you accept less than you know you deserve in how you are treated, in the quality of your work, in the commitments you make and keep to yourself, in the environments you choose to remain in, your subconscious mind reads those choices as data. It reads them as confirmation of a belief about your own worth, and it calibrates what it will allow you to attract accordingly. Raising your standards is not an act of arrogance. It is an act of self-respect that sends a precise message to your deepest self about what you are available for and what you are not. When you choose to leave a situation that does not honor your worth, even when staying would be more comfortable, you are telling your subconscious mind that you are someone who belongs in situations that honor your worth. When you hold your work to a higher standard than the minimum required, you are telling your subconscious mind that excellence is your natural territory. When you require respectful treatment from the people in your life, rather than accepting dismissal or disregard, you are telling your subconscious mind that respect is your baseline expectation. These standards, consistently applied, reshape the internal image of what you are appropriate for. And that internal image is what your subconscious mind works tirelessly to make your external reality. Aligned action is the bridge between subconscious training and actual outcomes in the physical world. Training your subconscious mind changes your perception, your expectation, your internal state, your receptivity. But the actual outcomes materialize through the actions those changes produce. And here is something critical to understand about the relationship between subconscious alignment and action. When your subconscious is genuinely aligned with a desired outcome, the actions that move toward that outcome begin to feel different. They feel less like forcing and more like following, less like pushing a boulder uphill and more like stepping into a current that is already moving in the right direction. The ideas come more readily. The energy for the work feels more available. The course corrections after setbacks happen more quickly. This is not magic. It is the difference between a mind whose full resources are pointed in one direction and a mind whose resources are divided between the conscious desire for one outcome and the subconscious expectation of another. When the inner and outer are misaligned, when you consciously want something but subconsciously expect the opposite, you are working against yourself in every action you take. The conscious mind pushes forward, while the subconscious creates subtle resistance. You take the step, and then hesitate on the follow-through. You open the door, and then find a reason not to walk through it. You get close to the outcome, and then do something that sends you back to the beginning. This experience is one of the most frustrating in human life, and it is enormously common. Because the gap between what people consciously want and what they subconsciously believe they deserve is large in most people. And closing that gap is precisely what the training in this chapter is designed to accomplish. The practice of acting as if is one of the most powerful tools for closing that gap from the behavioral side. It is not a practice of deception, it is a practice of identity rehearsal. When you act as if you are already someone who receives good things naturally, you are not pretending. You are practicing the behaviors, the postures, the decisions, the responses of the person you are becoming. And because behavior is one of the primary inputs your subconscious uses to understand who you are, consistently choosing the behaviors of your desired self gradually shifts the subconscious image toward that self. How would a person who genuinely expects financial abundance think about a business decision? Make that thought. How would a person who genuinely believes they deserve loving, respectful relationships respond to a moment of dismissal from someone? Make that response. How would a person who genuinely trusts in their own capability approach an unfamiliar challenge? Take that approach, not as performance, as genuine practice of an identity that is in the process of becoming real. Environment shapes the subconscious expectation of what is normal far more powerfully than most people credit. The standard of living and the quality of experience that exists around you on a daily basis is continuously setting a reference point for your subconscious mind. What it sees consistently, it begins to treat as the baseline of what is appropriate. This is why deliberately and consistently exposing yourself to the environments, conversations, experiences, and standards that you aspire to is not vanity. It is strategic subconscious training. Spend time in the places where the things you desire exist. Have conversations with people who are operating at the level you want to reach. Expose your senses to the quality of experience you are working toward, not as a form of escapism, but as a deliberate expansion of what your subconscious mind treats as normal and therefore attainable for you. This does not mean chasing luxury as an end in itself. It means taking your aspirations seriously enough to make them sensory realities in your daily life, wherever you can. If you want to build a business that operates at a certain level, spend time around businesses operating at that level. Learn their language. Understand their standards. Let that world become familiar to your nervous system rather than perpetually foreign. Familiarity is one of the most powerful signals your subconscious mind uses to determine what is within your reach. What has become familiar feels possible. What remains perpetually foreign continues to feel like it belongs to a different category of person. Expand what is familiar, and you expand what is possible in your deepest experience of yourself. The people you are in regular relationship with are also continuously contributing to your subconscious programming about what you are worth and what you are available for. Not only through what they say directly, but through what they model, through what they treat as normal, through what they expect from themselves, and therefore, indirectly, from you. Spend consistent time with people who have deeply internalized their own worth, and you will find your subconscious receiving messages that high standards and genuine self-respect are normal. Spend consistent time with people who chronically undervalue themselves and accept less than they deserve, and your subconscious will quietly absorb that as a model too. This is not a reason to view relationships transactionally or to cut people from your life without care. It is a reason to be honest and intentional about the cumulative effect of your social environment on the deepest layers of your own self-image. Patience with the process of subconscious attraction training is not optional. It is a fundamental requirement, because the subconscious mind was not built in a day, and it will not be rebuilt in one. The patterns that currently govern what you attract and what you repel have been in place, in most cases, for years, sometimes for decades. Replacing them requires the consistent application of new input over a sustained period of time. There will be points in this process where the external evidence of change is minimal, even though the internal work is real and deep. These are the moments that test whether your commitment to this process is genuine. These are the moments that separate the people who experience temporary enthusiasm from the people who experience permanent transformation. Trust the process during these periods of invisible growth. Consider that a seed planted in good soil does not show any evidence of its eventual tree for a significant period of time. But the growth is happening. The root system is being established. The foundation that will eventually support something extraordinary is being built in the dark, out of sight, without any visible confirmation. The visible confirmation always comes later, and when it comes in proportion to how deep the root system grew during the period when nothing seemed to be happening on the surface. Your subconscious mind is also highly responsive to gratitude, expressed specifically for things not yet physically present. This is a practice that some traditions describe as giving thanks for what is already on its way. It is not delusion. It is a specific form of subconscious training that combines expectation with gratitude to create a powerful internal signal of alignment with desired outcomes. When you sit in genuine gratitude for something you are working toward, as though it is already in progress, as though the mechanism of its arrival is already in motion, you are generating the emotional state of already having it. And that emotional state is one of the primary inputs your subconscious uses to calibrate what is appropriate for you to experience. Gratitude for the present reality, combined with genuine grateful expectation for what is developing, produces one of the most potent subconscious states available for drawing desired outcomes into lived experience. The thing you deserve is not defined by your past, not by what you have had before, not by what people in your environment typically experience, not by some external standard of what someone with your background or your history or your starting point is supposed to receive. What you deserve is defined entirely by what you are willing to claim, to prepare for, to align yourself with at the deepest internal level, and to take consistent action toward with your full commitment and your fullest quality of effort. Deserve is not a passive concept. It is not a status conferred upon you by some authority. It is a declaration. It is the daily practice of showing up as someone whose life is worth the very best of what they can create. It is the discipline of treating yourself, in private, with the same care and respect you would give to someone whose potential you deeply believe in. Because that is who you are, not who you will be someday. Who you are right now in the process of fully becoming. The subconscious mind, trained daily with the practices available to you, does not lie about your worth. It reflects it. Train it to see you as someone who naturally receives abundance, health, deep connection, meaningful work, and genuine fulfillment, and it will quietly, powerfully, relentlessly organize your perception and your behavior to make that reflection your waking reality. Not all at once, not without your continued effort and your honest engagement with the process, but with a consistency and a cumulative power that, over time, becomes genuinely undeniable. You are not waiting for permission to have the life you want. You never were. The permission has always been available. The only thing that has ever held it was the part of you that had not yet fully accepted that you are worthy of giving it to yourself. That part is changing. One day of practice, one genuine act of receiving, one raised standard, one expanded expectation at a time. What you deserve has always been waiting. You are finally becoming someone who will let it in. Chapter 9. Activate daily habits that accelerate your personal transformation fast. Transformation does not happen in the moments of breakthrough. It does not happen in the flash of sudden insight or the surge of inspiration that arrives after a powerful conversation or an emotionally charged experience. Those moments are real and they matter, but they are not where the actual work of change takes place. The actual work happens in the ordinary hours, the unremarkable Tuesday morning, the Wednesday afternoon when nothing particularly significant is scheduled, the Thursday evening when every part of you would rather rest than keep the commitment you made to yourself at the beginning of the week. Transformation is assembled in those invisible hours, one daily habit at a time, with a consistency so unglamorous that most people walk right past it looking for something more dramatic. And in looking for the dramatic, they miss the mechanism that actually works. A habit is not simply something you do repeatedly. At the biological level, a habit is a sequence of behavior that your brain has converted from a deliberate, attention-requiring process into an automatic one. The brain does this as an efficiency measure. Conscious deliberation is metabolically expensive. Your brain uses significant resources every time it has to make an active decision. So when it detects a behavior being repeated in a consistent context, it begins the process of automating that behavior, moving it from the part of the brain that requires conscious direction to the part of the brain that runs sequences without conscious input. This is why habits, once truly formed, do not require willpower to execute. They simply run. The question is not whether you have habits, you absolutely do. The question is whether the habits currently running automatically in your daily life are moving you toward the person you want to become, or keeping you exactly where you are. Most people approach the development of new habits with enormous ambition and insufficient strategy. They decide to overhaul their entire daily routine simultaneously. They commit to waking up earlier, exercising daily, meditating, journaling, reading, improving their nutrition, learning a new skill, and spending more intentional time with the people they care about, all starting on the same Monday morning. And by Wednesday of that same week, the weight of the total transformation required has crushed the momentum before it could establish any real roots. This is not a failure of character. It is a failure of understanding how change actually operates in the human system. The brain does not respond well to simultaneous wholesale transformation. It responds extraordinarily well to sequential, incremental, consistent addition. One new behavior, practiced until it begins to feel natural, before the next one is added. This approach feels slower than the dramatic overhaul strategy, but it produces permanent results, where the overhaul produces temporary enthusiasm followed by complete collapse back to the original baseline. The concept of a keystone habit is worth understanding deeply because it changes the entire strategy for daily transformation. A keystone habit is a single behavior that, when practiced consistently, creates ripple effects that positively influence multiple other areas of life without any additional effort. Research on behavioral change has identified that certain habits carry disproportionate weight in the overall system of a person's daily life. They create structures and emotional states that make other positive behaviors easier and more natural. They build the psychological momentum that overflows into adjacent areas. Exercise is one of the most studied examples of a keystone habit. People who establish a consistent exercise practice, even a modest one, consistently report improvements in their nutrition choices, their sleep quality, their stress management, their productivity, and their sense of self-discipline in areas completely unrelated to physical fitness. Not because exercise directly causes all of these improvements, but because the identity and the discipline and the daily experience of keeping a physical commitment to yourself create conditions in which other forms of self-care and self-discipline become significantly more accessible. Identify the keystone habit that makes the most sense for your specific life and situation right now. It is the single practice that, if done consistently, would make the greatest number of other improvements feel easier and more natural. For some people, this is physical movement. For others, it is a structured morning period of solitude before the demands of the day begin. For others, it is a consistent sleep schedule that stabilizes energy, mood, and cognitive function in ways that improve every other area of daily performance. Choose the one that speaks most directly to the specific frictions and limitations of your current life. Establish it fully. Let it become genuinely automatic before you add anything new. Because a single deeply rooted habit produces more real transformation over 12 months than a dozen superficially attempted ones. The architecture of your day determines far more about who you will become than most people realize. Not just what you do, but when you do it, in what sequence, and in what context. Behavioral science has established that the proximity of one behavior to another significantly affects the likelihood of both being sustained. When you anchor a new desired behavior directly to an existing established behavior, using the established behavior as the trigger for the new one, you are using the brain's existing habit infrastructure rather than trying to build something entirely new from scratch. This is called habit stacking. You find a behavior you already do consistently without thinking, and you attach your new desired behavior immediately before or after it. The existing behavior becomes the cue that activates the new one. Because the existing behavior is already automated, it reliably triggers the new behavior in the same way, day after day, without requiring you to rely on memory or motivation to initiate the practice. Make this concrete for yourself today. What existing behavior in your morning, afternoon, or evening could serve as a reliable anchor point for a new habit you want to establish? Perhaps you already make coffee every morning without exception. That action, standing at the counter waiting for the coffee to brew, is an anchor point. What could you attach to it? Perhaps a brief period of silent intention setting for the day. Perhaps a specific movement sequence. Perhaps the review of a single clear goal for the day. The coffee makes itself. Your new habit rides along. Over time, the two become linked, so naturally that doing one without the other begins to feel incomplete. The physical environment in which you spend your daily hours is one of the most underestimated accelerators of habit formation available to you, and it requires no willpower whatsoever to leverage. Your brain is continuously scanning the environment for cues that trigger established behavioral sequences. If the cues in your environment reliably trigger the behaviors you want, your environment is working for your transformation. If the cues in your environment reliably trigger the behaviors that are keeping you stuck, your environment is working against you, regardless of how much conscious intention you bring to your choices. Changing your environment often changes your behavior more efficiently and more reliably than trying to change your behavior through sheer mental effort against an unchanged environment. Make the habits you want easier to do by reducing the friction required to begin them. If you want to read more, put a book in the location where you typically sit in the evening and put nothing else there. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out everything you need the night before, so the first physical cues you encounter when you wake up are pointing toward movement. If you want to spend the first part of your day focused on your most important work, remove every device and notification that would pull your attention away from that work before it begins. Simultaneously, increase the friction required to engage in behaviors that are not aligned with who you are becoming. Make the mindless scrolling slightly less accessible. Make the quick path to distraction slightly less smooth. These are not dramatic interventions. They are small environmental adjustments that, applied consistently, tilt the daily landscape in the direction of your desired self without requiring continuous acts of willpower. There is a category of habit that most conversations about personal transformation overlook almost entirely, yet its influence on the quality of every other daily practice is profound. These are recovery habits, the specific daily practices that restore your capacity for the deliberate, intentional living that transformation requires. Humans are not machines. Sustained, focused effort, consistent emotional engagement with growth, the ongoing expenditure of mental and physical energy that genuine change demands. All of these require recovery to remain sustainable. Without adequate recovery built deliberately into the daily structure, the behaviors associated with transformation begin to erode not from lack of commitment, but from depletion. The mind becomes less capable of the clarity needed for intentional practice. The emotional resources required for growth become depleted. The body's ability to perform at the level needed to support a life of active development begins to deteriorate. Sleep is the foundational recovery habit, and it is worth treating with the same seriousness that you would give any high-performance practice. During deep sleep, the brain performs functions that are directly relevant to the subconscious transformation work you have been building throughout this entire journey. It consolidates learning. It processes and integrates emotional experience. It flushes metabolic waste products from neural tissue. It repairs and restores the physiological systems that support cognitive function, emotional regulation, and physical energy. A person who is chronically underslept is attempting personal transformation with a fundamentally compromised instrument. The practices work less effectively, the insights do not integrate as deeply. The emotional resilience required to keep going through difficulty is diminished, and the daily decisions that either support or undermine long-term growth are made with less access to the full cognitive and emotional intelligence that adequate sleep makes available. Treat your sleep schedule as a non-negotiable element of your transformation architecture. Establish a consistent time to stop the active input of the day, to let your nervous system begin its transition toward rest, and to arrive in bed with enough time to get the full duration of sleep your body requires to perform the restoration that the next day's growth demands. This is not laziness, it is the intelligent management of your most important resource. The highly disciplined person is not the one who sleeps as little as possible to maximize productive hours. The highly disciplined person is the one who understands what genuine productivity requires and protects the conditions that make it possible. Physical movement deserves a specific discussion beyond its role as a keystone habit. The relationship between regular physical activity and the acceleration of mental and psychological transformation is documented, significant, and consistently underestimated. Movement changes the chemistry of the brain in real time. It increases the availability of neurotransmitters associated with mood stability, mental clarity, and the capacity for learning. It promotes the production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, sometimes described informally as fertilizer for the brain, which supports the growth of new neural connections and the consolidation of new learning. Every time you move your body with genuine intention and effort, you are creating a biochemical environment inside your brain that makes the psychological and subconscious work of transformation more effective. You are literally preparing the soil for the seeds you are planting in your daily mental practices. The form of movement matters less than the consistency of it. Walking, lifting, swimming, cycling, yoga, dancing, any form of physical activity that challenges your body with genuine effort and is sustained for a meaningful period of time, produces the neurochemical effects that support transformation. The goal is not athletic performance. The goal is the consistent generation of the biological conditions that make your mind more receptive, more resilient, more plastic, and more capable of the sustained, focused effort that meaningful change requires. Find a form of movement you can genuinely commit to without constant motivation battles. Build it into your week as a structural element rather than an optional extra. Because the person who is building a transformed life needs their primary tool, their mind, operating at its fullest available capacity. What you consume in the hours after a significant learning or growth experience profoundly affects how deeply that experience is integrated. The brain consolidates new learning during periods of rest and, most significantly, during sleep. But the quality of the integration is influenced by what happens in the hours between the experience and the rest. If those hours are immediately filled with high stimulation, high distraction content, the integration is disrupted. The new material has to compete with the flood of new incoming information for the brain's consolidation resources. But if those hours include some deliberate quiet, some reflective space, some gentle processing of what was experienced, the integration deepens significantly. This means that the information diet in the hours following deliberate learning and growth practices matters. Protect those hours with some degree of intentional quiet. Let what you have learned settle before you flood the same channels with new material. The practice of deliberate solitude is one that profoundly accelerates personal transformation and is almost entirely absent from most people's daily lives. Solitude, understood not as loneliness, but as intentionally chosen time alone, without agenda, without device, without the filling of every silent moment with external stimulation, creates space for a quality of self-knowledge that busy engagement with the world cannot produce. In genuine solitude, patterns become visible that are invisible in the noise of a fully scheduled life. Clarity about direction arrives that cannot find its way through the constant interruption of a day structured entirely around external demands. The deeper self, the part of you that knows what you actually want and what actually matters to you, becomes more audible when it is not continuously being drowned out by the volume of everything else. Build solitude into your week intentionally, not incidentally, not as what happens to occur if nothing else fills the slot, but as a scheduled, protected, deliberately chosen period of quiet time that you treat with the same seriousness you would give any important appointment. It does not have to be long. 20 minutes of genuine solitude, genuinely quiet, and genuinely uninterrupted is more valuable than 2 hours of solitude interrupted every few minutes by the pull of a device. Use it without agenda. Sit, walk quietly. Let your mind move where it naturally goes. Some of the most important insights in your transformation process will arrive not during the active practices, but during these quiet spaces between practices. The habit of learning, distinguished from passive entertainment consumption, is one of the most direct investments available to someone committed to accelerated transformation. Consistent, intentional learning, reading with genuine attention and reflective processing, listening to content that challenges and expands your current understanding, engaging with ideas that are slightly beyond your current level of comprehension, keeps the brain in a state of active growth rather than maintenance. It continuously introduces new perspectives, new models for understanding human experience, new frameworks for approaching the challenges that arise in the process of building a different life. The person who is learning every day is genuinely becoming different every day, not in dramatic, visible ways, but at the level of the mental models, the vocabulary, the frameworks for thinking and deciding that quietly govern every choice they make. Make a specific decision about the form your daily learning practice will take. Not a vague intention to learn more. A specific, structured practice with a defined time, a defined duration, and a defined type of material. 15 focused, genuinely attentive minutes of substantive reading or listening every day produces more real intellectual and psychological development over a year than occasional long sessions done without consistent structure. The consistency of exposure matters more than the intensity of any single session. The brain learns through repetition and through the slow accumulation of understanding across multiple encounters with connected ideas. Daily learning, even in small doses, satisfies both of these conditions. Decision fatigue is a real and significant obstacle to sustained daily transformation that most people are not accounting for. Research in cognitive psychology has established that the quality of human decision-making deteriorates significantly as the number of decisions made in a day increases. Every decision, from the trivial to the significant, draws on the same finite pool of cognitive resources. By late in the day, many people find that their capacity for the kind of intentional, value-aligned decision-making that transformation requires has been substantially depleted by the accumulated weight of hundreds of smaller decisions made throughout the day. And the behaviors most likely to suffer from this depletion are precisely the ones connected to long-term growth, because those behaviors consistently compete with immediate comfort and familiar patterns for the resources of an already taxed mind. Reduce decision fatigue deliberately by simplifying the areas of daily life that do not directly contribute to your transformation. Standardize what you can. Establish default choices for recurring decisions that do not deserve significant cognitive investment. Lay out the structure of your day the night before, so the first hours of your morning, when your cognitive resources are freshest, are not spent deciding what needs to happen, but are spent executing what was already decided. The cognitive energy you conserve through this kind of structural simplification is directly available for the practices and decisions that actually matter to who you are becoming. The relationship between what you consume through screens and speakers every day and the speed of your personal transformation is one that deserves unflinching honesty. The average person spends a significant portion of their waking hours consuming content that was designed not to educate, inspire, or develop them, but to hold their attention for as long as possible in service of someone else's commercial interest. This content is engineered to be compelling. It is engineered to trigger emotional responses that create the desire for more. It is engineered to fill every available moment of potential quiet with stimulation, and it is consuming the time, the attention, and the mental space that your transformation practices require. Not because all consumption is harmful, but because the volume of unconscious, habitual consumption leaves very little room for the deliberate, intentional practices that create real change. Conduct an honest audit of your daily consumption, not to eliminate all entertainment or all leisure from your life. Genuine rest and enjoyment are important parts of a sustainable transformation lifestyle, but to distinguish between the consumption that actually restores you and the consumption that simply occupies you. The test is simple. After an hour of the consumption in question, do you feel genuinely restored, meaningfully inspired, or substantively informed? Or do you feel slightly depleted, mildly restless, and faintly guilty about the time that passed? The answer will tell you whether that particular form of consumption belongs in the life you are building. There is a specific weekly practice that dramatically accelerates transformation when applied consistently, and it is so simple that its power is easily underestimated. It is a weekly review, a designated period, perhaps an hour on a Sunday evening or a Saturday morning, in which you step back from the daily execution of your habits and practices and look at the week as a whole. You assess what worked and what did not. You identify where the practices held and where they broke down. You examine the moments of real progress, however small, and you acknowledge them specifically. You look honestly at the moments of inconsistency, and you ask not what was wrong with you, but what was wrong with the structure, or the environment, or the strategy, and what adjustment would make the following week more successful. You set a single, clear priority for the week ahead, and you design the structure of the week around that priority, rather than around whatever happens to come at you. This weekly review creates a layer of intentionality above the daily layer of habit execution that most people are missing entirely. Without it, weeks become years without clear direction or accumulated learning about what actually works for this specific person in this specific life. With it, every week becomes a unit of intentional progress in which something is learned, something is improved, and the overall trajectory of the transformation stays clear and consciously guided. Implementation intentions are one of the most consistently effective tools identified in behavioral research for converting good intentions into actual behavior, and they require almost no effort to use. An implementation intention is a specific, detailed plan for exactly when, where, and how a desired behavior will be executed. Instead of saying you intend to exercise this week, you say that you will exercise at 7 in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the spare room for 30 minutes before breakfast. Research shows that specifying the when, where, and how of an intended behavior dramatically increases the probability of it actually occurring, because the decision has already been made in advance. When the moment arrives, there is no deliberation required. The plan simply executes. The mental friction that exists between the intention and the action, the brief moment of deciding whether now is the right time, whether you really feel like it today, whether there is a reason to postpone, has been pre-eliminated by the specificity of the plan. Apply implementation intentions to every new habit you are establishing. Do not just decide what you will do, decide precisely when, precisely where, and precisely in what sequence you will do it. The more specific the plan, the more reliable the execution. and reliable execution, sustained over months, is exactly how permanent transformation accumulates. Tracking your habits produces results that extend well beyond the informational value of the data recorded. The simple act of marking a habit as completed on a tracker, whether in a physical journal, a simple calendar, or any other form that works for you, activates a specific psychological dynamic. It creates a visual representation of the streak you are building, and the psychological desire to maintain an unbroken streak is a powerful motivator that operates at a level below the more abstract motivation of long-term transformation. Long-term goals are important, but they are distant. The satisfaction of maintaining today's mark on an unbroken chain of consistent days is immediate. And immediacy is one of the most important features of any system designed to sustain behavior over time. When the streak breaks, because at some point in any real human life it will, the most important habit-related skill you can have is what might be called the never miss twice rule. Missing a habit once is an accident. Missing it twice is the beginning of a new habit. The research is consistent on this point. A single missed day has minimal impact on long-term habit formation. 2 consecutive missed days significantly increases the probability of the behavior not returning, which means the most critical moment in the life of any habit is not the day you start it. It is the day after you miss it. On that day, the only thing that matters is returning to the practice. Not with guilt, not with a lengthy self-critique about what the miss says about you, simply returning, treating the return itself as the practice, proving to your subconscious that this behavior is a permanent feature of your identity, not something that disappears at the first sign of friction. Identity is the deepest and most durable foundation on which any habit can be built. Habits attached to outcomes are inherently fragile, because once the outcome is achieved, or once it begins to feel impossibly distant, the motivation to continue the behavior evaporates. But habits attached to identity have a fundamentally different quality of staying power. When a behavior becomes an expression of who you are, rather than a means to an end you are pursuing, the behavior sustains itself. You do not need to remember why you are doing it every morning. You do it because it is what people like you do, because it is consistent with the self you have decided to be. Every habit you practice is simultaneously a vote cast for a particular identity. Every morning you choose the practice over the comfortable alternative. You are voting for the identity of someone who keeps their commitments to their own growth. Every time you return after a miss without drama or self-flagellation, you are voting for the identity of someone who is resilient and who does not define themselves by their worst days. Every week that you sit down for your review and honestly examine where you are and where you are headed, you are voting for the identity of someone who lives with intention and learns from experience. These votes accumulate. Over weeks and months, the accumulation becomes undeniable, and you look up one day and realize that the practices you once had to push yourself toward have become simply what you do. That the person you were working to become is the person you now are. Daily habits are not the preparation for your transformation. They are your transformation, happening in real time, invisibly and powerfully, and without fanfare, in the ordinary hours of the ordinary days that add up to the entirety of your life. Honor them with consistency. Protect them with structure. Refine them with weekly honesty. And trust that the cumulative weight of daily, intentional living will produce, over time, exactly the life that the truest and most capable version of you has always deserved to inhabit. Begin with today. Not with everything. With one thing. The right one thing, practiced faithfully, will show you the next thing. And the next thing will reveal the one after that. This is how a transformed life is actually built. One deliberate daily choice at a time, by someone who has decided that showing up for their own becoming is the most important work they will ever do. It is, and you are doing it right now. Chapter 10. Commit to lifelong growth and become your greatest self. There is a moment that arrives for every person who has genuinely committed to the work of becoming. It arrives quietly, without announcement, often in the middle of an ordinary day. It is the moment when you realize that the person you used to be and the person you are now inhabit such different internal worlds that the distance between them can barely be measured in words. You think differently. You respond to challenge differently. You hold yourself differently. You make decisions from a completely different place than you did when this journey began. And in that moment, something significant becomes clear. Not that you have arrived, not that the work is done, but that growth itself has become the point. That the process of becoming has stopped being a means to an end and started being the most meaningful feature of how you experience being alive. That is the beginning of genuine lifelong commitment, and it changes everything about how you move through the rest of your days. Most people approach personal growth the way they approach a project with a completion date. They identify something they want to fix or improve. They work on it for a period of time. They experience some degree of improvement, and then they stop, either because the immediate motivation has faded, because the obvious discomfort that initiated the effort has been sufficiently relieved, or because they have simply reached the point that felt like enough. They treat their development as a problem to be solved, rather than a capacity to be continuously expanded. And this framing, while understandable, ultimately limits how far they can go. Because the kind of growth that is conditional, that stops when the pain stops, or when the first level of comfort is achieved, will always plateau at the level of okay. It will never reach the level of extraordinary. And extraordinary is what you are capable of when growth becomes not something you do for a period, but something you are for a lifetime. The commitment to lifelong growth is not a dramatic declaration made once at a peak emotional moment. Declarations without structure are just feelings dressed up in intention. The commitment is a daily orientation, a way of moving through the world that treats every experience, pleasant or painful, successful or disappointing, as containing something worth learning from. It is the decision to approach your own life with permanent curiosity rather than the premature certainty that you have already figured out what there is to figure out. Premature certainty is one of the quietest killers of human potential. When a person decides they already know who they are and what they are capable of, they stop looking for evidence to the contrary. They stop asking the questions whose answers might demand something more of them. They stop opening the doors that might reveal rooms in themselves they have never had the courage to enter. The greatest version of yourself is not a fixed destination. This is perhaps the most liberating idea in the entire landscape of personal development. Because if your greatest self were a fixed point that you either reached or failed to reach, the entire enterprise of growth would be a kind of race with a finish line. And races with finish lines produce a specific kind of energy, urgent and focused, but ultimately temporary, that fades when the line is crossed or when it feels too far away to reach. But if your greatest self is understood as the most developed, most authentic, most fully realized version of you that is currently possible given everything you are working with in this specific chapter of your life, then it is always attainable and always evolving simultaneously. You reach it by being fully who you are today while remaining genuinely open to becoming more tomorrow. There is no point at which you have fully arrived. There is only the quality and depth of engagement with the journey you are currently on. This understanding transforms the entire relationship between who you are and who you are becoming. It removes the self-judgment that comes from comparing yourself to some imagined final version. It removes the frustration of measuring your current state against an ideal that keeps moving, and it replaces both of those with something far more productive. A genuine, humble, engaged relationship with the specific next step of your development. Not the whole staircase, just the next step, and the willingness to take it without needing to see the entire structure from where you currently stand. Growth that is genuinely lifelong requires a relationship with discomfort that goes beyond what most people are willing to build. In the early stages of a personal development journey, the discomfort is obvious and immediate. You are doing things you have never done before. You are confronting beliefs you have held for years. You are changing behaviors that have been automatic for decades. The friction is palpable, and the fact that you are pushing against something real is self-evident. But as the journey continues, as the earlier challenges become more familiar and more navigated, the discomfort shifts. It becomes subtler. It requires you to look in places you would not naturally look, to ask questions about yourself that are more nuanced and more demanding than the early questions were, to hold a level of honest self-examination that goes beyond the surface changes and reaches into the more defended and more protected layers of who you have built yourself to be. This is where most people quietly stop growing, not because they have completed their development, but because they have reached a level of comfort within their growth that functions as a new plateau. They have outgrown their original limitations, but they have not yet identified the next set. They feel better than they used to feel, function better than they used to function, and have built a life that is genuinely more aligned with their values than the one they had before. And this is wonderful. This is real. But it is also a new comfort zone. And comfort zones, even upgraded ones, have walls. The question that lifelong growth asks, continuously and without apology, is what is beyond these walls. Not from a place of dissatisfaction with what has been built. From a place of genuine curiosity about what has not yet been discovered. Mentorship is one of the most accelerating forces available to anyone committed to continuous development, and it operates in two directions simultaneously. Having a mentor, someone who has traveled further along the road you are walking and who can offer perspective, challenge, and guidance from the vantage point of their further development, compresses the learning curve of growth in ways that solitary effort cannot match. A good mentor does not tell you what to think. They ask you questions that reveal the limitations of how you have been thinking. They reflect back to you things about yourself that your own proximity to yourself makes invisible. They have made the mistakes that lie ahead of you, and they can help you see them coming. Access to this kind of perspective, whether through a formal mentoring relationship, through deep engagement with the work of those further along the road through their writing or teaching, or through the consistent company of people whose development is more advanced than your own in specific areas, is not a luxury for the serious growth-committed person. It is a necessity. The other direction of mentorship, in which you serve as a guide to someone whose journey is earlier than yours, is equally transformative, but in different and complementary ways. Teaching what you know deepens your own understanding of it in ways that passive possession of the knowledge does not. When you are required to articulate something clearly enough for someone else to understand and apply it, you discover the gaps in your own comprehension. You identify the places where you knew something in theory but had not yet fully integrated it in practice. You encounter questions from the person you are guiding that you had never thought to ask yourself. And in answering those questions, or honestly acknowledging that you do not yet have the answer, you grow. The commitment to lifelong growth is therefore also a commitment to the ongoing cycle of learning and teaching, because each role continuously strengthens the capacity for the other. Purpose is the fuel that makes lifelong growth sustainable when motivation fluctuates, and motivation will always fluctuate. Motivation is an emotional state, and emotional states are variable by nature. They rise and fall based on internal chemistry, external circumstances, recent experiences, and 100 other factors that no amount of discipline can fully control. Relying on motivation as the primary driver of continuous growth is therefore inherently unstable. On the days when motivation is high, growth happens easily. On the days when it is low, which come in every human life without exception, growth stops. And a growth practice that stops whenever motivation drops will never accumulate the kind of sustained momentum that produces genuine long-term transformation. Purpose is different from motivation. Purpose does not fluctuate with your emotional state. It does not rise and fall with your energy levels or your circumstances. It is the deep, clear, honest understanding of why your growth matters. Not just to you, to the people whose lives your becoming touches, to the children who observe how you move through the world, to the colleagues whose days are shaped by the quality of your presence and your contribution, to the people who will come into your life in the future and who will be profoundly affected by who you have chosen to become by the time they arrive. Your growth is never only about you, it ripples outward in ways you cannot fully see or measure. The mother who does the inner work of releasing old anger does not just free herself. She changes the emotional environment her children grow up in. The leader who commits to genuine self-awareness does not just become a better person. They become a different kind of force in every room they enter. Purpose, understood at this level, is inexhaustible. It does not run out, and therefore the growth it sustains does not run out. Spend real time with the question of your purpose, not to produce a polished answer suitable for performance, but to arrive at an honest understanding of what matters to you about your own development that goes beyond the personal benefits of feeling better or achieving more. What do you want to have contributed, through who you became, by the time your life reaches its end? What will people who knew you well say you stood for? What will the shape of your journey, the challenges you moved through, and the ways you moved through them have demonstrated about what a human life can be? These questions are not abstract philosophical exercises. They are practical navigational tools. Because the clearer your answers to these questions, the more powerful the orientation they provide on the days when the easier path is to stop growing and the harder path is to continue. Integrity in its fullest sense is the foundation on which the greatest version of any self is built. Not integrity as a performance of virtue for public observation. Integrity as the alignment between what you know to be true, what you claim to value, and how you actually live in the private hours when performance for others is not a factor. The word integrity shares its root with the word integer, meaning whole. And this is precisely what genuine integrity produces, a wholeness of self, an internal coherence between your values and your actions that eliminates the exhausting friction of living divided. The person who knows they should do one thing and consistently does another carries an invisible weight that compounds over time into a kind of quiet desperation. The person whose daily choices consistently reflect their deepest values carries a quality of lightness and energy that accumulates rather than depletes. Becoming your greatest self is therefore inseparable from becoming your most honest self. The greatest version of you is not the most impressive version of you as seen from the outside. It is the most authentic version of you as experienced from the inside, the version that does not require a particular audience or a particular circumstance to show up fully. That is equally present, equally real, equally committed to their own values in the difficult moments as in the easy ones, in the moments of failure as in the moments of success, in the private moments as in the public ones. This consistency, this wholeness, is not achieved once and maintained automatically. It is chosen repeatedly in the ongoing practice of aligning your daily living with your highest understanding of who you want to be. Forgiveness is a dimension of lifelong growth that deserves attention in this final chapter because it is the one that most people defer the longest and that carries the highest cost in its deferral. Not just forgiveness of others, though that too. The forgiveness of your own past self for the choices made from a level of understanding that was the best available at the time. You will look back across this journey, at the years before you began and at the early stages after you did, and you will see choices you would not make today, responses that your current self finds hard to recognize as yours, moments of smallness, cruelty, fear, or simple unawareness that your growth has since made impossible to be proud of. These are not evidence that you are irredeemable. They are evidence that you grew, that the person making those choices operated from a different level of understanding. And that understanding what you did not yet know then is a mark of how far you have come, not a reason to carry permanent guilt about where you once were. The greatest self you are becoming must be built on a foundation of self-compassion, not self-punishment. Chronic self-punishment does not accelerate growth. It drains the energy that growth requires. It creates an internal environment of hostility toward the self that makes genuine learning from experience significantly harder, because learning requires openness, and openness is incompatible with the closed, defended state that chronic self-criticism produces. Acknowledge your past mistakes with honesty. Understand them with curiosity. Extract from them the learning that serves your forward movement, and then release the emotional charge of guilt and shame that is no longer serving any purpose except to weigh down the person who is trying to build something better. The concept of seasons in personal growth is worth sitting with as you commit to the lifelong version of this journey. Just as the natural world moves through seasons without treating winter as a failure or summer as the only valid state, your development will move through its own seasons. There will be seasons of intense and rapid growth when everything seems to be changing and expanding and becoming clearer at a pace that feels almost overwhelming. There will be seasons of quiet consolidation when the changes that were made need time to settle and integrate before the next layer can be worked. There will be seasons of difficulty when the growth is happening primarily through the experience of loss, disappointment, or disruption, rather than through the experience of addition and expansion. And there will be seasons of genuine rest when the most important growth-supporting act is to stop pushing and simply allow yourself to exist without agenda in the life you have been building. All of these seasons are legitimate. All of them are necessary. The mistake is to treat only one of them as valid and to spend the others in anxiety about not being in the right one. The person committed to lifelong growth understands that different seasons require different things, and that the wisdom to recognize which season you are in and to respond to it appropriately is itself a form of growth. Forcing expansion in a season of necessary consolidation is as counterproductive as forcing rest in a season of genuine opportunity. Reading your own seasons accurately and responding with the intelligence of someone who understands the whole cycle is part of what it means to become the greatest version of yourself. Relationships are the most revealing mirror of your internal state, and therefore one of the most important arenas of lifelong growth. Who you are in your closest relationships, the degree of presence you bring, the quality of listening you offer, the courage with which you express your genuine needs and your genuine care, the patterns you repeat and the ones you interrupt, reflects with extraordinary precision what your inner work has accomplished and what it has not yet reached. Relationships do not lie. They surface exactly where your growth is genuine and exactly where it remains theoretical. The practices and principles of an entire personal development journey will eventually be tested most thoroughly, not in moments of solitary practice, but in the ordinary and extraordinary crucibles of human connection. Commit to growing in your relationships with the same intentionality you bring to your inner practices. This means developing the capacity for genuine listening that is not interrupted by the preparation of your own response. It means developing the courage to be honestly vulnerable with people who matter to you, rather than performing a version of yourself that is easier to maintain but less real to inhabit. It means developing the skill of repair, of returning to a relationship after a moment of disconnect or conflict, with both honesty about your contribution to the difficulty and genuine interest in rebuilding. These relational skills are not separate from the inner journey. They are its most demanding and most rewarding expression. Contribution is what transforms personal growth from a self-focused project into something with the kind of meaning that sustains a lifetime of commitment. At some point in the journey, and the timing is different for every person, the question shifts from what you can get from your development to what your development can give. What capacity you are building that will allow you to contribute something genuine to the world around you. Not because your own growth is no longer important, but because the deepest expression of your own growth is the quality and authenticity of what you are able to offer from it. The person who grows only for themselves eventually runs out of a certain kind of fuel. But the person who grows because they understand that their becoming is also the becoming of everyone their life touches, has access to a source of motivation that does not have a ceiling. Ask yourself regularly what your current level of development is making possible for other people, not in a grandiose way that suggests your individual growth is solving global problems, in the specific human, day-to-day way that matters most. Is the work you are doing on yourself making you a more patient parent, a more present partner, a more honest and contributing colleague, a more available friend, a more genuine member of the communities you belong to? These are the real metrics of the greatest self in practice. Not the performance scores on abstract markers of achievement, but the quality of actual presence and genuine impact in the specific relationships and circumstances of your actual daily life. Legacy is a word often associated with the famous and the historically significant, but it belongs equally to every person who has ever lived with genuine intention. Your legacy is not the public monuments erected in your name. It is the private difference made in the lives of the people your existence touched. It is the quality of the example you lived, of what it looks like to keep growing through difficulty, to choose honesty when ease was available, to extend genuine care to people who did not expect it, to keep showing up for your own becoming even when the result was not yet visible. Legacy is built in the same invisible increments as everything else in this journey, and the extraordinary thing about a legacy built from genuine personal growth is that it extends far beyond what you will ever be able to see. Because the people you affected through your becoming affected other people, and those people affected others. The ripples travel outward from the stone dropped into the water of a single committed human life in ways that reach shores the original stone never knew existed. You do not need a grand audience to leave a significant legacy. You need depth. You need the kind of genuine and committed engagement with your own development that produces a quality of human presence capable of leaving something real in the lives of the people near you. A person who lives this way, who takes seriously the ongoing work of becoming their truest and most developed self, who serves others from the abundance that genuine growth produces, and who continues this work without waiting for perfection or permission or a guarantee of the outcome, is living a life of genuine significance, regardless of whether anyone outside their immediate circle ever knows their name. The journey through this book has been a journey through the specific practices and principles that make genuine transformation available to any person willing to engage with them honestly and consistently. But a journey through ideas, however powerful the ideas, only becomes a real journey when the ideas meet the ground of actual daily life. When the understanding moves from the intellectual layer down through the emotional layer and into the behavioral layer, where it lives not as something you know, but as something you do. The knowing is the beginning. The doing is where the knowing becomes real. And the being, the deep integration of these principles into the fabric of who you actually are, is the destination that the doing, sustained over time, inevitably produces. You have everything required to become the greatest version of yourself, not a modified, qualified, asterisked version of everything. Genuinely, everything required. The subconscious mind you have begun to train is the most powerful creative mechanism ever discovered. The beliefs you have begun to release were never the truth about you, only a story about you that you are now writing differently. The confidence you have begun to build is already more real than the doubt that was there before it. The voice you have begun to use with greater intention is already speaking you into a more powerful and more authentic version of your own story. The fear you have begun to move through has already shown you that you are someone capable of moving through fear. The attraction patterns you have begun to shift are already signaling to every level of your mind that you are someone who deserves and expects good things. The habits you have begun to build are already assembling the daily architecture of a transformed life. None of this is gone when you close these pages. It is in you. It has been building in you across every chapter, every insight, every moment of recognition where something landed and you knew it was true. That cannot be taken back. The person who began the first chapter and the person reading these final words are not the same person. Something has already changed. Something irreversible has already happened in the relationship between you and your own potential. And the question now is not whether you can become your greatest self. It is how completely you are willing to commit to the journey of finding out exactly how extraordinary that self can be. Commit completely, not conditionally, not with one eye on the exit strategy in case it becomes too difficult, not with the mental reservation that you will try this for a while and see what happens. Completely. With the full knowledge that the journey will be demanding and imperfect, and sometimes deeply uncomfortable, and completely worth every moment of every dimension of the effort. With the full understanding that there will be days you fall short, and days you exceed your own expectations, and that both kinds of days are part of the same journey toward the same person. With the full acceptance that lifelong growth has no graduation ceremony, no moment when the work is finished, no day when you wake up and discover that you no longer need to practice anything. Just the ongoing, expanding, endlessly rewarding experience of a human life being lived with genuine intention at its fullest available depth. Your greatest self is not waiting at the end of this journey. Your greatest self is who you are when you are fully engaged with this journey. When you are present to where you are, honest about who you are, curious about who you can become, committed to the practices that make the becoming real, generous with what the growing produces, and grateful, genuinely and specifically grateful for the extraordinary capacity of the human mind, your mind, to change, to expand, to heal, to learn, and to become something far greater than what it was shaped into by the circumstances of the past. You were never the sum of what happened to you. You are the sum of what you choose to do with what happened to you. And the choosing, from this moment forward, is fully and completely and irreversibly in your hands. The work continues. The growth expands. The greatest version of you is already in progress, and it is more extraordinary than you have yet allowed yourself to imagine.